Chapter 1485. Rumble. As Murong-Yu's body was engulfed by the primal chaos flames, the flames that filled the sky also spread out and enveloped Shui Yuanhua in an instant. Not only that, but the endless primal chaos flames also engulfed the Turtle King's defensive barrier layer by layer and began to burn it. Sizzle. In just an instant, a series of ear-piercing sounds were heard. It was the sound of the Turtle King's protective barrier being burned. Murong-Yu had succeeded. At this moment, some people in the square cheered. Most of them were disciples from the 10 Great Saint Lands, as well as some who could not stand the Turtle King's arrogance. However, the hearts of many people outside the 10 Great Saint Lands sank. This was because the Turtle King represented them at this moment. If the Turtle King could not defend against Murong-Yu's attack, he would not be able to win the championship. What level of flames are Murong-Yu's black flames? They can actually burn the Turtle King's defensive barrier? One must know that before this, other people have also tried to burn this defensive barrier, but they could not even shake it. Murong-Yu was not the first person to use fire to burn the Turtle King's defensive barrier, but he was the first person who could shake it. The originally arrogant Turtle King Shui Yuanhua was shocked when he saw this. He thought that Murong-Yu could really break his attack. However, after the shock, he laughed out loud. It was true that the primal chaos flames could burn his defensive barrier. However, the burning effect was almost negligible. That was because the consumption was very little. If this continued, it would take a few years for the Turtle King's defensive barrier to be broken. Moreover, he could replenish his energy to the barrier at any time. Moreover, he had a large number of pills that could replenish his energy in his storage ring. If this continued, even if he was burned by Murong-Yu for decades, or even centuries, his defensive barrier would not be broken. However, would the true martial temple allow this battle to take so much time? Most importantly, would Murong-Yu be able to maintain this state? How long could his energy sustain the primal chaos flames? Murong-Yu, I'll give you a century to burn my defensive barrier. Ha! Tortoise King Shui Yuanhua laughed loudly. He was extremely arrogant. Is that so? Murong-Yu sneered in a non-committal manner. Whatever Turtle King Shui Yuanhua could think of, he naturally thought of it as well. What Turtle King Shui Yuanhua said was the truth. At this rate, Murong-Yu would indeed need a few decades to break through his defensive barrier. Of course, using a soul attack was another matter altogether. In fact, Murong-Yu had another method to defeat Turtle Monarch Shui Yuanhua in one fell swoop. Taking out the supreme artifact, the Violet Heavenly Civ Pagoda, could instantly turn Turtle Monarch Shui Yuanhua into ashes. However, that would expose the fact that Murong-Yu possessed a supreme weapon. At that time, apart from the Seamless Society, the other 10 Holy Lands would definitely try their best to snatch his supreme weapon. He couldn't even leave the true martial sacred hall. Moreover, Murong-Yu didn't want to turn Turtle King Shui Yuanhua into ashes. At the very least, he wouldn't do that before he obtained the 9 syllables of truth. Of course, Murong-Yu could also put Turtle King Shui Yuanhua into the Hichu Luoshu and use the time acceleration to easily defeat him. However, Murong-Yu didn't want to expose the Hichu Luoshu. Therefore, what Murong-Yu needed to do now was to raise his cultivation level. The higher his cultivation level, the purer the primal chaos flames would be, and the stronger the power it could unleash would be. At this time, Murong-Yu had 72 ancestral artifacts, which could raise his cultivation level by several small levels. I didn't think that I would still need to raise my cultivation level. Murong-Yu sighed. With a thought, the 16 ancestral artifacts were directly transferred from the Hichu Luoshu into his body, and then into the primal chaos furnace. The primal chaos furnace shook slightly, and the 16 ancestral artifacts were refined into incomparably pure energy in an instant. Then, a vast amount of energy gushed out from the primal chaos furnace and surged into Murong-Yu's body. At that moment, everyone watched as Murong-Yu's aura began to rapidly rise. Swish! 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 Murong-Yu was originally a 4th-level profound sage, an early 4th-level profound sage. However, at this time, Some people with higher cultivation levels than Murong Yu saw that Murong Yu's cultivation was rapidly rising. Early 4th Order Profound Sage Realm, Mid 4th Order Profound Sage Realm, Peak 4th Order Profound Sage Realm. Rumble. In the next moment, Murong Yu's body shook violently, and an aura several times stronger than before gushed out from his body, sweeping in all directions. The many experts who had been watching Murong Yu's cultivation couldn't help but exclaim, "5th Order Profound Sage Realm." Murong Yu actually broke through in the middle of a battle. Originally, breaking through in the middle of a battle was extremely dangerous, and very few people would choose to break through at this time. However, few didn't mean none. If it were someone else breaking through at this time, although it would cause some people to be surprised, they definitely wouldn't be shocked like this. Because after breaking through, Murong Yu's cultivation continued to soar. At this time, Murong Yu's primal chaos furnace had already refined 32 ancestral artifacts. In just a few breaths of time, Murong Yu jumped from the original 4th Order Profound Sage Realm to the 5th Order Profound Sage Realm. And not long after staying in this realm, he broke through again, reaching the 6th Order Profound Sage Realm. In a short period of time, Murong Yu's cultivation had broken through 2 small realms. How did he cultivate at the same time? How could he break through so quickly? It should be known that when Murong Yu entered the true martial temple, he was only in the undead realm. In just 1 or 2 months, his cultivation had risen from the peak of the undead realm to the 6th Order Profound Sage Realm. Not only did he break through 6 small realms, but he also crossed the barrier of a large realm. And this barrier was not something that even a peerless genius could break through at will. For a while, the gazes of everyone in the square were attracted by Murong Yu. Even the gazes of some old monsters of the true martial temple penetrated the layers of the void and penetrated Murong Yu's body. This is really infuriating. This boy was originally a disciple of our true martial temple, but now, he's really infuriating. Some old monsters of the true martial temple were so angry that their faces turned ashen. Seeing that Murong Yu was such a monstrous genius, but he was a member of another force, they were definitely unhappy. Moreover, Murong Yu's strength was still increasing. However, now that Murong Yu had reached the 6th Order Profound Sage Realm and refined 48 ancestral artifacts, he only had 34 ancestral artifacts left. According to the previous practice, every time he broke through a small realm, he would need twice as many ancestral artifacts as the previous small realm. After using 32 ancestral artifacts, Murong Yu had advanced from the 5th Order Profound Sage Realm to the 6th Order Profound Sage Realm, and from the 6th Order Profound Sage Realm to the 7th Order Profound Sage Realm. He would need at least 64 ancestral artifacts. Therefore, after refining the 34 ancestral artifacts in his hands, he only advanced to the middle of the 6th Order Profound Sage Realm. But even so, it was enough to cause an extremely terrifying shock. As Murong Yu's strength increased, the power of the primal chaos flames he brought out also increased by 10 times. With the current power of the primal chaos flames, it would take 10 years to burn through Turtle King Shui Yuanhua's defensive barrier. The time it would take was shortened to 1/10 of the original time. At first, Turtle King Shui Yuanhua was really worried when he saw Murong Yu's strength continuously increasing. If this continued, once Murong Yu advanced to the peak of the Profound Sage Realm, the primal chaos flames would easily burn through his defensive barrier. But now, it seemed that this was not the case. How could it be so easy to advance in realms? He must have swallowed some kind of natural treasure before, and just refined the remnant power of that natural treasure. Turtle King Shui Yuanhua and the majority of the people thought so. Murong Yu, why don't you continue to increase your realm? Otherwise, you will never be able to burn through my defensive barrier. Turtle King Shui Yuanhua became arrogant again. Is that so? Murong Yu only smiled faintly. I don't want to use fire to burn you to death. Instead, Murong Yu said with a smile on his face. However, everyone was baffled by his words. Could it be that Murong Yu had other methods? While everyone was guessing, Turtle King Shui Yuanhua felt that something was wrong. From Murong Yu's smile, he could see a strong sense of danger. Heavenly tribulation, come for me. Just as everyone was guessing that the Turtle King had smelled danger, Murong Yu roared. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk at this moment, layers of incomparably thick tribulation clouds appeared out of thin air, enveloping the entire true martial temple. As for the square where Murong Yu was, the tribulation clouds were so thick that they almost pressed down to the ground. Suddenly, an extremely oppressive and dangerous aura spread out, enveloping everyone's heart, causing everyone's expression to change. Heavenly tribulation. Murong Yu actually attracted a heavenly tribulation. Everyone reacted one after another. Some of them didn't hesitate to flee into the distance. The more people there were, the more terrifying the power of the heavenly tribulation was. With so many experts erupting together, the power of the heavenly tribulation would be incomparably terrifying. Other than a small number of primal chaos ancestral sages, the sages of the other realms would probably be blasted into nothingness. Therefore, the experts who realized that the situation was critical did not have time to blame Murong Yu. All of them used their great abilities and began to move the people near the square to other places. At the same time, restrictions appeared out of thin air, isolating the square from the true martial temple. This was to prevent the heavenly tribulation from sensing other people and causing any accidents. Heavenly tribulation. The Turtle King's expression suddenly changed. He was not afraid of anything but the heavenly tribulation. Judging from the strength of the heavenly tribulation that Murong Yu had attracted, even if he could withstand it, he would have to pay a huge price. However, if he left now, the heavenly tribulation would naturally not affect him. However, anyone could leave the square at this time, but he could not. Once he left the square's range, he would be considered to have lost. Although Shui Yuanhua was arrogant, the more arrogant a person was, the stronger their pride. His pride did not allow him to leave the square at this time. He wanted to resist the heavenly tribulation head-on. Chapter 1486. From the cultivation world to the current sacred world. Every time he broke through a realm, Murong Yu would be baptized by the heavenly tribulation. It had not changed for many years. It was just that his strength was getting stronger and stronger, and the power of the heavenly tribulation was getting more and more terrifying. However, it could not continue to do anything to Murong Yu. Therefore, every time he broke through, Murong Yu would trigger a heavenly tribulation and undergo a baptism. However, these heavenly tribulations did not pose any threat to him. Thus, he had always quietly undergone his tribulation and was done with it. But now, Murong Yu decided to share this heavenly tribulation with Turtle King Shui Yuanhua. This was because he had broken through to the profound sage realm in the true martial sacred hall, so he had no time to go through the tribulation. Previously, he had raised his realm to the 6th level of the profound sage realm in order to make the heavenly tribulation even more powerful. Boom! The tribulation lightning fell very quickly. Just as everyone retreated, the first wave of tribulation lightning had already struck. However, this wave of tribulation lightning was divided into two, bombarding Murong Yu and Turtle King Shui Yuanhua respectively. After an earth-shattering explosion, Murong Yu stood in place without moving. The power of the first wave of tribulation lightning was already quite strong. If it was an ordinary ancient sage, they would have been directly struck to death. However, Murong Yu's strength was very strong, and this level of tribulation lightning was not a threat to him at all. Moreover, his physical body had been upgraded to a high-grade sacred artifact in the lightning small world, so it had a certain resistance to lightning. Therefore, when this wave of tribulation lightning struck Murong Yu's body, it was like scratching an itch for him. It was insignificant. On the other side, the Turtle King's defense was really strong. After the first wave of tribulation lightning struck, he stood in place without moving. However, the surface of the defensive barrier he had propped up was flickering with lightning, and the holy light was erratic. Looking through the defensive barrier, Murong saw the Turtle King grimacing in pain. This guy could absorb the power of attacks. Ordinary lightning might not have any effect on him, and he could still absorb it. However, the lightning power of the heavenly tribulation was the most violent. After absorbing the power of the tribulation lightning, it quickly destroyed his meridians, flesh, and bones. Although the Tortoise King quickly suppressed him, he still grimaced in pain from the electricity. Furthermore, this was only the first lightning tribulation. Murong-Yu's heavenly tribulation had a total of 81 stages. The power of the heavenly tribulation is only SOSO. After safely passing through the first lightning tribulation, Turtle King Shui Yuanhua once again laughed loudly. He was still as arrogant as before. Murong-Yu sneered. This is only the first level of tribulation lightning. Do you know how big this heavenly tribulation is? 81 levels of tribulation lightning? Furthermore, each layer was more terrifying than the last. Take your time and enjoy it. Hearing this, Turtle King Shui Yuanhua's face froze. He could no longer smile. I don't believe that your defense is stronger than mine. Tortoise King Shui Yuanhua laughed nastily. Perhaps my defense isn't as strong as yours, but I can block this tribulation lightning. In the end, the loser will be you, and the champion will still be me. Murong-Yu sneered. Going through the heavenly tribulation didn't only rely on a strong defense. It also required a strong physical body and other aspects. With Murong-Yu's physical body and other abilities, he could definitely block this heavenly tribulation. Rumble. Rumble, wave after wave of tribulation lightning continued to strike down. The first 10 waves of tribulation lightning were easily blocked by the two of them. However, after the 10th wave, the Tortoise King started to struggle. This was because the power of the tribulation lightning was too terrifying. The more terrifying the tribulation lightning was, the more difficult it was for the Tortoise King Shui Yuanhua's defensive barrier to block it. Furthermore, the more violent the tribulation lightning was, the less he could absorb. He didn't even dare to absorb it anymore. Therefore, he could only rely on the elixirs that he carried with him to recover the energy that he consumed. Once the elixirs were used up, it would be the time for his turtle shell to shatter. At the 20th wave, the Tortoise King Shui Yuanhua had already started to consume the elixirs. This was because he was already resisting the elixirs. If he didn't consume the elixirs, his energy would be shattered at any time. At this moment, Murong-Yu was still as calm as ever. It was as if these weren't tribulation lightning, but ordinary lightning. Seeing that he was having such a hard time resisting it, Murong-Yu was having such an easy time. The Tortoise King Shui Yuanhua gritted his teeth in hatred. He couldn't wait to slap Murong-Yu to death. However, how could he have extra energy to attack Murong-Yu? Moreover, he didn't dare to get close to Murong-Yu. If he got close to Murong-Yu, he would have to endure the tribulation lightning of two people at the same time. This wasn't something that he could bear. He couldn't, but Murong-Yu could. Therefore, a dangerous smile appeared on Murong-Yu's face. Just as the Tortoise King Shui Yuanhua was on guard, he took a step forward and disappeared from the spot. Without any warning, the Tortoise King Shui Yuanhua's expression changed abruptly. He quickly retreated. At the same time, an extremely dangerous aura appeared in his heart. Whoosh! Sure enough, just as he retreated, Murong-Yu's figure appeared at the place where he was standing just a moment ago. Tortoise King, today I'll shatter your turtle shell. Murong-Yu smiled. He took another step forward and charged forward. The Tortoise King was so frightened that his expression changed. He quickly retreated. However, how could his speed compare to Murong-Yu's? Boom! By the time Murong-Yu appeared in front of him, a bolt of tribulation lightning had already struck down. Therefore, the two of them endured twice the amount of tribulation lightning. Murong-Yu, on the other hand, wasn't affected much. Only his clothes were fluttering from the impact. However, the Tortoise King's turtle shell shook violently. Lightning flashed. Puff! The Tortoise King spat out a mouthful of blood. It was unknown whether it was because he was injured by the tribulation lightning or because he was angered by Murong-Yu. Wah! The Tortoise King actually spat out blood. He was actually injured by Murong Yu to the point of spitting out blood. Murong Yu, on the other hand, is completely fine. At that moment, many people cried out in alarm. Although it was the Tribulation Lightning's ability, the Tribulation Lightning was triggered by Murong Yu. Moreover, wasn't Murong Yu fine? Therefore, when comparing the two, Murong Yu is still stronger. It seems like the Tortoise King is going to fail. He's no match for Murong Yu. The surrounding people's gazes pierced through the layers of void and watched the battle between the two. The Tortoise King was furious. However, he could only retreat. He could not avoid Murong Yu. However, Murong Yu followed suit. He was like a shadow attached to the Tortoise King's body. He was like a gangrene attached to the Tortoise King's bones. In fact, during this process, Murong Yu had also unleashed his most berserk attack. The Tribulation Lightning's attack was Murong Yu's most violent attack. Not long after, the Tortoise King Shui Yuanhua could not take it anymore. He swallowed all kinds of pills that could replenish his strength in big mouthfuls. The pills in his storage ring were about to be used up. However, the tribulation had not yet reached the 50th layer. How terrifying is Murong Yu's physical body? These Tribulation Lightning can't shake him. Seeing Murong Yu casually strolling around, many people, including the primal chaos ancestor sages, were shocked. For them, they only needed to shake their bodies to disperse the Tribulation Lightning. However, Murong Yu is only a profound sage after all. Tortoise King Shui Yuanhua, are you still not going to admit defeat? Murong Yu said loudly as he continued to bombard the Tortoise King. The Tortoise King was furious. His killing intent surged. However, he did not say a word. He kept dodging Murong Yu while eating pills. Suddenly, the Tortoise King Shui Yuanhua stretched out his hand and grabbed the air. However, he caught nothing. His pills had been used up. Upon seeing this, Murong Yu sneered. What? You don't have any more pills? How long can your tortoise shell last? The Tortoise King looked at the thick tribulation clouds in the sky with an ugly expression. His eyes flickered with struggle. I admit defeat. In the end, after hesitating for a long time, the Tortoise King gritted his teeth and admitted defeat. At the same time, he soared into the sky and shot out of the true martial temple. Although he could not cut off the heavenly tribulation like this, he could divert it. The most important thing was that he would not let Murong Yu get close to him again. Although it was dangerous for one person to transcend the tribulation, it was much better than having to endure the tribulation of two people. Therefore, he chose to stay away from the true martial temple. Murong Yu did not chase after him. He just smiled coldly. Then, he stood in the square and calmly transcended the tribulation. Although Murong Yu had won, the elders of the true martial temple did not stand up. It was not that they did not recognize Murong Yu's victory. In fact, they did not want to get involved in the tribulation. Once they were involved in the tribulation, it would be triggered when they reached the primal chaos ancestor saint realm. Perhaps the first stage of the tribulation would be enough to kill Murong Yu. At the same time, they might not be able to transcend the tribulation safely. Bolts of tribulation lightning continuously struck down. A terrifying pressure enveloped the entire true martial temple. However, Murong Yu was really good at transcending the tribulation. No matter how violent the tribulation was, he still managed to transcend it safely. In fact, Murong Yu's physical body was strong enough to begin with. Moreover, every time he broke through a major realm, he would be baptized by the tribulation. It could be said that his physical body was full of radiance from the tribulation. Over time, his physical body had developed a certain level of resistance to the heavenly tribulation. It was because of this that it became easier for him to transcend the tribulation. Unless the tribulation was so terrifying that it surpassed Murong Yu's limit. Murong Yu wins. He is the champion of this martial arts competition. After the dust settled, the elders of the true martial temple appeared to give Murong Yu the award. At the same time, the people who had been hiding appeared one after another. However, everyone looked at Murong Yu as if they were looking at a monster. Murong Yu had monstrous talent, aptitude, and powerful strength. Moreover, he could withstand the tribulation lightning. Not only did people think that he was monstrous and a genius, but he was also mysterious. At this time, Murong also learned that the higher-level martial arts competition had fallen. Yu Yangjia did not disappoint and won the championship. So far, 4 out of the 5 champions of this exchange had fallen into the hands of the Infernal Organization. Only the lowest level of the martial arts competition had been won by the true martial temple. This was because the Infernal Organization did not have a disciple of that level. Otherwise, the Infernal Organization might have a Grand Slam. Chapter 1487. For Champions. The Infernal Agency, who almost never participated in the 10 Great Holy Lands exchange, was the biggest winner this time. After becoming the champion of the Armament Refining Assembly, Murong Yu received a Great Heavenly Essence Pill, which could increase a refiner's ability to inscribe formations. The Sky-Piercing Vitality Pill was the reward for the champion of the Alchemy Conference. It could increase the compatibility between the alchemist and the pill. In other words, it could increase the compatibility between the pill and the pill when the alchemist formed the pill. Murong Yu defeated Turtle King Shui Yuanhua and won the Great Heavenly Origin Pill, which could allow an ancient sage to break through to the Sage Ruler Realm. Aside from Murong Yu, Yu Yangjia had also become the champion of their level. He had obtained a pill that could increase the Primal Chaos Ancestor Sage's comprehension and help them break through to the Supremacy stage. The 9 Suns Soaring Dragon True Pellet. These pills were quite useful to Murong Yu, especially the Heavenly Peiyuan Qi Pill and the Supreme Heavenly Origin Qi Pill. Although the other 2 pills didn't have much of an effect on Murong Yu, they were extremely important to the others. Thus, when Murong Yu's group of 4 returned to the true Martial Sacred Hall's mountain peak, Murong Yu got straight to the point and asked Yu Yangjia, 4's senior brother, "Can you give me this medicinal pill for the time being?" Yu Yangjia was stunned. Lu Xiankai and Wu Xinshui were also stunned. There were so many sages in the holy world. Who didn't want to become a supremacy? It would be too hypocritical to say that they didn't want to become a supremacy. However, there were only 10 supremacies in the holy world. Even so, it was impossible to stop others from wanting to become a supremacy. Maybe one day, supremacy would fall and they would break through at that time. Maybe they would become one of the 10 supremacies in the holy world. This was especially true for Primal Chaos Ancestor Sages. After obtaining the Great Heavenly Origin Pill, Yu Yangjia's chances of breaking through to the Supremacy realm would be much higher. However, why did Murong Yu suddenly want this pill? Did he not know how important this pill was to Yu Yangjia? Lu Xiankai and Wu Xinshui were puzzled. "Ah, junior brother, here you go." After being stunned for a moment, Yu Yangjia laughed heartily and handed the 9 Suns Soaring Dragon True Pellet to Murong Yu. There was no hesitation, but he didn't hide the look in his eyes. Yes, although he handed it to Murong Yu without hesitation, it was impossible for him to remain indifferent. Murong Yu was shocked. He'd only asked casually and had even prepared a lot of reasons to convince Yu Yangjia. However, he never imagined that Yu Yangjia would be so generous as to give such an important medicinal pill to Murong Yu. He couldn't even speak the words he prepared. Yu Yangjia wasn't just being generous. He truly loved and cared for Murong Yu, the kind of love a senior brother would have for a junior brother. Yu Yangjia is Yu Yangjia. He trusted Yangjia Yu Yangjia. Murong Yu was quite touched, but he still accepted the 9 Suns Soaring Dragon True Pellet. He wanted this pill anyway. 4th senior brother, soon, you'll find that your actions today are worth it. You will not regret it. Murong Yu said to Yu Yangjia with a serious face. Lu Xiankai and Wu Xinshui looked at each other. Then Lu Xiankai asked Murong Yu Yangjia in surprise, "Junior brother, you want to refine the Great Heavenly Origin Pill?" The 3 of them weren't idiots. They just didn't react in time. Now, they understood Murong Yu Yangjia's meaning. Murong Yu Yangjia nodded. That was his intention. Once he succeeded, everyone in the Infernal Society would have a share. Some of Shenzhen's disciples would also have a share. This was something that was beneficial to everyone. They could maximize the benefits of this pill. The three of them were overjoyed. If Murong Yu Yangjia could really refine it, they would be the ones who would benefit the most. Yu Yangjia said, "Junior brother, if you need anything, just tell us. With our strength, it's much better for us to gather all these materials than for you to gather them alone." Murong Yu Yangjia nodded. He wasn't worried about the heaven and earth treasures he needed. After all, the yin-yang cauldron didn't need any materials to refine these pills. It was just that the great heavenly origin pill was too high level. Murong Yu Yangjia was worried that he wouldn't be able to refine it at this stage. In the following time, Murong Yu Yangjia's group didn't immediately leave the true martial temple. They deliberately stayed behind, because in the past few days, countless people had come to visit them. Among them, most of them were here for Murong Yu. After all, a monster like Murong Yu Yangjia was someone they could befriend. Of course, there was no lack of people who wanted to kill Murong Yu Yangjia. The taller the tree in the forest, the more the wind would destroy it. The more monstrous Murong Yu Yangjia was, the more some people hated him and wanted to kill him. After all, once Murong Yu Yangjia fully matured, how heaven-defying would he be? Would their existence be the most dangerous? Everything was unknown. Therefore, many people wanted to find out the truth about Murong Yu Yangjia. If they had the chance, they would definitely kill him. This kind of thing was the same, even in the mortal world. However, these people were obviously disappointed. After Murong Yu Yangjia returned, he went into seclusion. Only Yu Yangjia and the other two were receiving him. After a few days, the number of people staying in the true martial temple became fewer and fewer. On this day, Murong Yu Yangjia suddenly appeared in the main hall. "Senior brothers, I still have some matters to attend to, so I won't be returning with you." After Murong Yu Yangjia appeared, he suddenly announced. Yu Yangjia and the other two were shocked. "Junior brother, although you're in the limelight now, and many people want to befriend you. However, there are also many people who want to kill you. It's safer for you to return with us." Lu Xiankai said with a worried expression. Murong Yu Yangjia shook his head. What he was going to do was very secretive, and it was not suitable for him to act with Yu Yangjia and the other two. Otherwise, if word got out, it would cause a war between the major forces. "Junior brother, you have to be careful." Although Yu Yangjia did not know what Murong Yu Yangjia was going to do, he still made the decision. Therefore, the four of them bid farewell to the true martial temple and left together. As soon as they appeared outside the true martial temple, Yu Yangjia and the others frowned slightly. Because at this moment, outside the true martial temple, there were countless people watching them, both in the open and in the dark. It was obvious that a considerable number of these people were monitoring Murong Yu Yangjia. There was no lack of disciples from other sacred grounds. Therefore, Yu Yangjia and the others were a little worried. "Senior brothers, let's part ways here." Murong Yu Yangjia naturally felt it, but he ignored it. After cupping his fists at Yu Yangjia and the other two, he soared into the sky and directly shattered the void, shooting into the distance. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Almost at the same time that Murong Yu Yangjia left, more than half of the people who were secretly monitoring them disappeared instantly. As expected, they were targeting Murong Yu. "Fourth senior brother, will a junior brother be okay?" Wu Xinshui asked worriedly. "It's fine. With junior brother's ability, he will definitely not send himself to death. We don't need to worry. Let's go back to the infernal division first." Yu Yangjia replied. At the same time, he soared into the sky and flew in the direction of the infernal division. What a fast speed! Damn it, I can't catch up. In the sky, a high-level holy king looked at the rapidly disappearing black in front of him and cursed with a dark face. His speed was definitely one of the best among the experts of the same level, and he was adept at tracking. It was because of this that he was sent to track Murong Yu Yangjia. However, Murong Yu Yangjia's speed was too terrifying. In a short period of time, he had shaken off most of them. The speed that they were so proud of was nothing in front of Murong Yu Yangjia. Furthermore, when Murong Yu flew through the air, he didn't leave any traces behind. At least, they could not find any traces left behind by Murong Yu Yangjia. Murong Yu Yangjia was very proficient in using the power of space. When he swept through the void, he naturally would not leave any traces behind. There are still people chasing after us? Ancestral saints? Murong Yu shattered the void and directly shuttled through the void. In a short period of time, he had shaken off most of the people. However, there were still a few people who caught up. They were all experts at the level of ancestral saints. I'd like to see how you're going to track me. Murong Yu Yangjia sneered in his heart. He took a step forward and turned into a stream of light that quickly rushed down. He entered a vast mountain range and quickly disappeared. He's gone. These ancestral saints saw Murong Yu enter the mountain range with their own eyes. However, after searching for a while, they could not find any trace of Murong Yu Yangjia. However, they were sure that Murong Yu Yangjia had not left the mountain range. Therefore, they kept searching. It was not until a few days later that Murong Yu Yangjia's traces appeared in other places. Only then did they know that Murong Yu Yangjia had left the mountain range long ago. As for how he left, for a long time, they were confused and could not figure out at all. After Murong Yu Yangjia entered the mountain range, he immediately turned invisible. Then, he entered Hichu Luoshu and left the mountain range with a transmission. Even if these ancestral saints raised the endless mountain range to the ground and dug 3 feet into the ground, they would not be able to find any trace of Murong Yu Yangjia. After Murong Yu Yangjia Shui Yuanhua teleported to the other side, he walked out of Hichu Luoshu and said, "Turtle King Shui Yuanhua, I'm coming." After vaguely sensing Turtle King Shui Yuanhua's aura, he shot in another direction. On the other side, Shui Yuanhua, who had recovered from his injuries, also opened his eyes from the depths of the ground. He rushed into the sky with a grim smile and flew in the direction Murong Yu Yangjia Shui Yuanhua had come from. He didn't know why, but ever since they fought in the square, there had been a faint connection between them. As long as they were within a certain distance, they could even feel each other's existence. And if that was the case, the more they believed that the other party had something they needed. They must kill the other party. Chapter 1488. Both of them sensed each other's presence and charged towards each other with all their might. Soon, they both sensed that the other was getting closer and closer to them. They immediately knew that the other party had the same idea as them. Thus, the two of them met in the sky above a vast mountain range. Go to hell. Almost at the same time, the two of them roared and charged towards each other like shooting stars. In the blink of an eye, the two of them fiercely collided. An earth-shattering explosion erupted. Boom! After the earth-shattering explosion, a terrifying shock wave spread rapidly in all directions from the point of impact. Wherever it passed, large patches of the void would shatter. The mountain range below them had been razed to the ground. Some of the ferocious beasts were blasted to smithereens before they could even react. Bang! Bang! Murong Yu and Turtle King Shui Yuanhua were both sent flying by the terrifying shockwave. They shattered the void and appeared in the distant void. The moment before the collision, Shui Yuanhua used the Acalanthus seal. Therefore, he was only sent flying. Otherwise, his strength and physical body would have been shattered by Murong Yu's upper-grade holy artifact body. He could not withstand a single blow. Because of the Acalanthus seal, Murong Yu was also sent flying by the huge impact. However, with his fleshly body that had reached the level of a high-quality saint artifact, he was only sent flying. He was not injured. Murong Yu, I was just about to look for you. I didn't expect you to come to me. Very good. Very good. Let's see if you can still trigger the tribulation lightning this time. After stabilizing himself, Shui Yuanhua looked at Murong Yu with a ferocious smile. This was because at this time, the Acalanthus seal in his body was raging madly. The more intense this strange feeling was, the more he wanted to kill Murong Yu and take the things on Murong Yu. The stronger his desire was. In fact, it was not just Shui Yuanhua. Murong Yu was the same. and Murong Yu was even more intense than Shui Yuanhua. This was because Shui Yuanhua only practiced the Buddhist incantation of 9 words, while Murong Yu practiced 6 of them. The army formula, the Zai formula, the 6 incantations were raging at the same time. They did not need Murong Yu to circulate them at all. They almost broke out of his body. This is a sign of a breakthrough, Murong Yu thought. Before this, every time he encountered a 9-words mantra, the 9-words mantra he had cultivated before would break through once and reach a higher realm. If Murong Yu were to obtain Shui Yuanhua's 9-syllables mantra, his soldier character formula would definitely advance. Even without the heavenly tribulation lightning, Murong Yu shouted as he stomped on the void for a distance of 1,000,000 miles. His figure shattered the void and turned into a streak of light as he charged towards Shui Yuanhua. Shui Yuanhua looked ferocious. He also stepped forward with the Akalanthus seal. He crushed the sky and rushed toward Murong Yu. In the process, he even took the initiative to attack. Boom, boom, boom. So, the battle between the two began. The power was overwhelming. The endless power swept in all directions like a torrent, crushing the void and flattening the earth. The sky fell and the earth cracked. The sun and the moon lost their light. It was like the end of the world. Awesome, Murong Yu shouted. He used the Great Vajra Chakra seal to send Shui Yuanhua flying. The battle with Shui Yuanhua gave Murong Yu a feeling of incisiveness and vividness. For a long time, Murong Yu had rarely met an opponent who could tie with him. Otherwise, he would meet someone who was stronger than him and unable to use his full strength. Shui Yuanhua's turtle shell was too strong. It was enough to block Murong Yu's most powerful and violent attack. It allowed Murong Yu to use his most powerful moves and strength without any scruples. Moreover, during the battle, Murong Yu found that although the Akalanthus seal had the power to reflect, long-range attacks like the Great Vajra Chakra seal were the best way to attack. Even if it could reflect, it could not reflect on Murong Yu. Of course, this was also because the Great Vajra Chakra seal was also the Buddhist incantation of 9 syllables. If it were any other cultivation method, it would also be able to reflect the impact. Even so, the Akalanthus seal could still absorb power. Outer Lion Seal, Inner Lion Seal. Murong Yu blasted out handprints one after another. They hit Shui Yuanhua directly and suppressed him or sent him flying. For a moment, Shui Yuanhua could not even get close to Murong Yu, let alone attack him. Although he would not be injured or killed by Murong Yu's attacks, being hit by Murong Yu like a sandbag still made the proud and arrogant Shui Yuanhua furious. He was so angry that he was about to go crazy. Bastard, if you have the ability, fight me for 300 rounds. Shui Yuanhua was about to go crazy and roared. Murong Yu took a step forward and distanced himself from Shui Yuanhua. At the same time, he used the Sun Chakra seal to send Shui Yuanhua deep into the ground. At the same time, he sneered and said, "If you have the ability, remove your turtle shell, and I will fight you for 3,000 rounds." Shui Yuanhua was silent. In terms of strength, he was far inferior to Murong Yu. If he removed the Akalanthus seal, he could tell himself with certainty that he would be killed by Murong Yu in an instant. Humph! Shui Yuanhua snorted coldly. He crushed a mountain below with 1 foot and rushed up. He passed through layers of the void and directly hit Murong Yu. After a round of battle, Shui Yuanhua clearly realized that it was impossible for him to exhaust Murong Yu's strength like he did with other experts. Therefore, he could only take the initiative to attack and try to kill Murong Yu. Therefore, Shui Yuanhua took the initiative to attack. He blasted out all kinds of combat skills and various holy tools. However, Murong Yu's speed was unparalleled in the world. Shui Yuanhua's attacks were not enough for him to defend and leave. Therefore, he could not bombard Murong Yu at all. He could not even touch the corner of his clothes. The more he fought, the angrier and more frightened Shui Yuanhua became. However, the desire for the unknown things on Murong Yu made him more determined to kill Murong Yu. At the same time, on the other side of the battlefield, where Murong Yu and Shui Yuanhua were fighting countless accidents. Several experts with terrifying auras were flying rapidly in the void. They actually followed Murong Yu's tracks and kept flying forward. If Murong Yu was here, he would definitely be shocked because these people's tracking techniques were extremely professional. Moreover, each of them was very powerful. They were all experts at the Ancestor Saint level. It's impossible for a person's talent to be so heaven-defying. Murong Yu definitely has some secret on him. Perhaps he has inherited some ancient inheritance. We must capture him and bring him back. On the way, the leader of the Ancestor Saints suddenly said. The other Ancestor Saints nodded. Their mission was to capture Murong Yu. In addition to these people, powerhouses were constantly appearing from different directions or behind them. They were all experts at the Ancestor Saint level. Looking at the direction they were heading, they seemed to be heading in the direction of Murong Yu. Obviously, their target was Murong Yu. It was just that they didn't know who they were. However, Murong Yu's heaven-defying abilities had already attracted the attention of the old monsters from the 10 Sacred Lands. Presumably, those from the 10 Sacred Lands would also take action against him. In the southeast direction of Murong Yu, the originally clear sky suddenly darkened. At the same time, a sinister and cold aura spread out and enveloped the entire area. At this moment, countless lives, including wild beasts and human sages, felt a bone-piercing chill. At this time, some sages looked up and saw a few black shadows flashing across the sky. The cold and gloomy aura came from this black figure. However, these black shadows were extremely fast and passed by in the blink of an eye. After those black shadows passed by, the sky returned to its original clear sky. However, the sinister and cold feeling in everyone's heart did not dissipate for a long time. What's that? Everyone was puzzled. The humans are too useless. In the sky, an ancestral sage from the Een Ghost tribe sneered with a disdainful expression. They were those black shadows and belonged to the Een Ghost tribe of the Sacred Clan. They were extremely powerful. Don't be careless. If the humans were so weak, they would have been wiped out by our Sacred Clan, another ancestral sage from the Een Ghost tribe said indifferently. Hearing this, the third ancestral sage from the Een Ghost tribe said disdainfully, the humans are just struggling at death's door. The so-called 10 Sacred Lands are completely useless. In my opinion, we should just wipe out the humans. As long as our Een Ghost tribe takes action, we can destroy them. Why should we let them struggle at death's door? Shut up, all of you. If the humans are so weak, how can they compete with our Sacred Clan? This time, our target is a human boy called Murong Yu. There's something strange about that boy, the leader of the Een Ghost tribe scolded. They were originally ancestral sages from the Een Ghost tribe who had entered the human territory to train. After hearing news about Murong Yu, they sent a message back. Then, they were ordered to capture Murong Yu and bring him back. Furthermore, other than the Dark Ghost clan, there were other clans that had also set out to search for Murong Yu. It was obvious that Murong Yu's monstrous talent had made these clans want to kill him. He's just a human boy. Is there a need for the higher-ups to be so serious? Can he really become a supreme being? There were only 10 supreme beings in the sacred world. In a situation where the sovereigns didn't participate in the conflicts between the various clans, the appearance of one supreme being from each clan would change the current situation of the sacred world. It was obvious that Murong Yu's monstrous talent made the Sacred Clan feel that he had the ability to become a supreme being. They would never allow such a person to continue living. In fact, there were too many supreme beings who were in the limelight who had been strangled in the cradle. It wasn't just the humans. The Yao clan and Sacred Clan geniuses were the same. The other clans wouldn't allow such a person to grow. They had to kill him. Chapter 1489. The wind blew and the clouds moved. People came from all directions. Ever since Murong Yu had revealed his monstrous talent, he had attracted the attention of many people. The humans, the demons, and even the sacred ones had noticed him. However, they had only noticed him. They had only sent out ancestor sages to hunt down Murong Yu. They had either captured him or killed him. In short, they had only one goal: to strangle Morongyu in the cradle of his growth. However, Morongyu was completely oblivious to all of this. At that moment, he was still fighting fiercely with Turtle King Shui Yuanhua in the Nameless Mountain Range. The terrifying power continued to sweep in all directions. The originally vast and boundless Nameless Mountain Range was also razed to the ground by the force of their impact. However, although the two of them were still fighting, they looked completely different. Morongyu looked relaxed and calm, as if he was taking a stroll in the park. On the other hand, Turtle King Shui Yuanhua looked flustered and exasperated. Although his defense had not been broken by Morongyu, he could not touch Morongyu. Being beaten like a sandbag was a psychological blow to Turtle King Shui Yuanhua. A psychological blow. Sooner or later, Turtle King would definitely be defeated by Morongyu. However, if Morongyu did not have any special methods, it would be extremely difficult for him to kill Turtle King. It was because of these thoughts that Turtle King did not run away, even though he was being suppressed by Morongyu. He was still fantasizing about exhausting Morongyu's strength and then killing him. Little bastard, kill me if you can. Turtle King Shui Yuanhua cursed in exasperation. His expression was sinister, vicious, and ferocious. All right, since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Morongyu had wanted to see if he could break through Turtle King's defense with his own strength. However, he now knew that it was impossible. Of course, Morongyu was not in a hurry. After all, his strength was limitless. He wanted to see how long Turtle King's defense could last and whether there was a limit. However, for some reason, as time passed, an extremely obscure feeling of unease gradually appeared in his heart. Things had changed. There was a saying that went, "A long night brings many dreams." Thus, Morongyu decided to kill the Tortoise King. Turtle King Shui Yuanhua only sneered when he heard that. He did not think that Morongyu had the ability to kill him. Therefore, he did not think much of it. Soul-devouring slash. Seeing Shui Yuanhua's indifferent expression, the corner of Morongyu's mouth curled into a sneer. At the same time, he roared in his heart. At that moment, Turtle King Shui Yuanhua, Shui Morongyu, Shui Yuanhua, Shui Yuanhua. Furthermore, the incomparably strong aura of death stimulated all the hair on his body to stand on end. What's going on? Turtle King was shocked. At the same time, the power in his body rapidly surged, pushing the defense of his defensive barrier to the limit. At the same time, Turtle King Shui Yuanhua felt an invisible power directly penetrate the defense of the immovable seal of wisdom and sweep towards his head. Shui Yuanhua was instantly shocked. His face was filled with disbelief. Isn't it said that it can defend against any power? Unless it actively absorbs it or the defensive barrier is broken, no power can penetrate it? But what's going on now? This thought only flashed through Shui Yuanhua's mind for 1/100th of a second. At the same time, the power that made him feel danger had already rushed into his soul space. At this moment, Shui Yuanhua finally reacted. Soul power, soul attack. Morongyu, you're actually a soul saint. Shui Yuanhua roared madly in his heart. His face was filled with shock, disbelief, and indignation. Morongyu himself had the strength to cross 2 major realms. He was also a genius in alchemy and weapon refinement. Just this alone was enough to attract attention. He could be said to be a genius among geniuses. But he was actually a soul saint. In the saint's world, those who possessed even one aspect could be considered geniuses among geniuses. They were 1 in a billion, but Morongyu possessed all 4 of them. This could no longer be described with words. If one had to describe it, then there was only one word: abnormal. Originally, after obtaining the immovable seal of wisdom, Shui Yuanhua thought that he was a peak existence among geniuses. However, ever since he had met Morongyu, he had been dealt with one blow after another, which had struck his heart hard. And at this moment, his soul was also shattered. I'm really sorry. I forgot to tell you that I'm also a soul saint. Morongyu smiled faintly. His voice was like a mosquito buzzing in Shui Yuanhua's ear. At the same time, Shui Yuanhua's fragile soul was shattered into millions of pieces by Murong Yu's attack. Although Shui Yuanhua's defense was strong, his attack was extremely weak. He was also not a soul saint. Therefore, after his soul was shattered, he was already dead. Although the immovable seal of wisdom was strong, it was unable to defend against soul attacks. Poof! After his soul was destroyed, Shui Yuanhua's corpse quickly fell to the ground. At the same time, a bright light shot out from his body. It broke through the void and flew towards the sky at extremely terrifying speed. Where do you think you're going? Murong Yu's enormous divine thought had already enveloped everything within 100 million miles. When he saw that the light was trying to escape, Murong Yu made his move. He abruptly stretched out his large hand, his 5 fingers forming a claw, and swiftly grabbed at the ray of light. Rumble, wherever the claw passed, the void collapsed. In an instant, Murong Yu's large hand broke through millions of voids and rushed to the sky. However, although he was fast, the light was even faster. Murong Yu's large hand was still an unbridgeable distance from the light. Moreover, this distance was rapidly increasing. There was no way Murong Yu would allow this light to disappear. This was because he knew that this light was one of the words in the 9 syllables Buddhist incantation that Turtle King Shui Yuanhua cultivated. If this word escaped, Murong Yu did not know if he would have a chance to meet it again. Of course, this would not only happen after Turtle King Shui Yuanhua was killed. If Murong Yu was killed, the 6 9 syllables Buddhist incantation that he cultivated would also turn into 6 lights and leave. Bang! Without any hesitation, the demon wings appeared behind Murong Yu's back. Then they fanned wildly. With a flash of black light, Murong Yu had already broken through the void and quickly chased after it. Rumble. Just as Murong Yu chased after the light, suddenly, not far behind Murong Yu, a few extremely terrifying auras suddenly burst out. At the same time, 3 incomparably huge hands with incomparably terrifying auras broke through the sky and quickly grabbed at the light. Someone was trying to snatch the 9 syllables Buddhist incantation. Murong Yu was shocked and angry, but he did not care so much. He could only raise his strength to the limit and rush forward. It's Murong Yu. You too, take him down. I'll block that light and see what it is. An indifferent voice sounded. Then, 2 of the 3 big hands that were originally grabbing at the light changed direction and fiercely grabbed at Murong Yu. Murong Yu was shocked and angry because he felt a strong sense of danger. These 3 people gave him an aura of death. This was because they were all powerhouses of the Ancestor Sage realm. 2 Ancestor Sages were attacking Murong Yu. How could Murong Yu, who was only in the profound Sage realm, resist? However, Murong Yu had no other choice. He could only resist these people head-on. No matter what, he had to fight. Therefore, in the blink of an eye, Hichu Luoshu and the Yin-Yang Cauldron were brought out by him, respectively facing the 2 Ancestor Sages. Seeing Murong Yu bring out 2 sacred tools, the 2 Ancestor Sages only sneered in their hearts. Then, their big hands fiercely slapped downwards. Boom! Boom! Without any suspense, the Yin-Yang Cauldron could not withstand a single blow and was directly sent flying by the 2 Ancestor Sages. The terrifying power of the attack surged through the air, and Murong Yu's mental strength was shattered a lot. Fortunately, his soul was strong, and this mental strength was still unable to cause any substantial damage to him. Moreover, although the 2 sacred tools were unable to block the attack of the 2 Ancestor Sages, they were still able to stop the attack of the 2 Ancestor Sages. However, it had succeeded in stopping the attacks of the 2 Ancestral Sages for an instant. This was the reason why Murong Yu had brought out his sacred artifact. Therefore, in a flash, he had already broken through the blockade of the 2 big hands and rushed straight towards the light that was rapidly rushing into the distance. Oof! Seeing this, the 3rd Ancestor Sage snorted coldly and did not attack Murong Yu. Instead, he grabbed at the light at an even faster speed. Even if he did not know what the light was, How could it be ordinary if it was something that Murong Yu wanted so desperately? First, he had to catch the light, then take down Murong Yu. Could it be that Murong Yu could escape from the attacks of 3 ancestor sages? This ancestor sage was much faster than Murong Yu, and also much faster than the light. Seeing that he was about to catch the light in his hands, Murong Yu suddenly panicked and no longer cared about hiding his strength. With a single thought, an incomparably huge amount of soul power blasted out from his spiritual space, turning into a war knife and slashing fiercely at the ancestor sage. The ancestor sage was indeed an ancestor sage. He was much stronger than Shui Yuanhua, who only had defense. Before the soul power could attack his physical body, he felt the danger. Therefore, he retreated to defend. It was also at this moment that his outstretched hand paused for a moment. At this moment, Murong Yu's speed suddenly increased, and he smashed through the void, breaking through the ancestor sage's big hand and directly appearing near the light. At the same time, his big hand reached out and grabbed the light. Chapter 1490. Boom! Just as Murong Yu grabbed the ray of light, a series of muffled noises erupted from his body. In an instant, 6 loud noises exploded almost at the same time. At this moment, something strange seemed to have happened in Murong Yu's body. At this moment, Murong Yu seemed to feel that he had become stronger than before and possessed a more terrifying combat strength than before. However, he did not pay attention to all of this. It was not that he did not want to pay attention to it, but he did not have the time to observe these changes now. This was because the 3 ancestor sages' huge hands had already shattered the void and were grabbing towards him with terrifying pressure. The void shattered and the firmament was annihilated. This put an end to the possibility of Murong Yu entering Hichu Luo Shu. Therefore, Murong Yu could only shoot out rapidly. If he wanted to escape from the attacks of the 3 ancestor sages, he could only rely on his own speed. With a swoosh, Murong Yu turned into a stream of light and disappeared from where he was standing. After he disappeared, the 3 ancestor sages' huge hands grabbed the void where he was originally at. In an instant, the void was crushed to pieces. Seeing that Murong Yu had escaped from their attacks, the 3 ancestor sages' faces turned ugly and they snorted coldly. At the same time, an even more terrifying attack blasted towards Murong Yu, wanting to capture Murong Yu in one fell swoop. My speed is at least 50% faster than before. It's comparable to an ordinary first-rank ancestor sage. A look of surprise flashed across Murong Yu's face, but it was only for a moment. He clearly understood that the reason why his speed had soared was most likely due to the advancement of the army character formula. Even if it had not advanced, it was definitely much stronger than before. At this speed, Murong Yu would have no problem escaping from the 3 ancestor sages. Therefore, Murong Yu raised his strength to the extreme and turned into a stream of light that flew forward rapidly. As long as he escaped from the attack range of the 3 ancestor sages, he could take the opportunity to enter Hichu Luo Shu. At that time, even the primal chaos ancestor sage wouldn't be able to do anything to him. However, the ideal was plentiful, but the reality was always so bony. Just as Murong Yu increased his speed in an attempt to shake off the 3 ancestor sages, several extremely powerful auras appeared in front of him. 5 ancestral saints. The 5 ancestral sages approached. When Murong Yu discovered their existence, the 5 ancestral sages also discovered Murong Yu and the 3 ancestral sages who were chasing after Murong Yu. Without any hesitation, the 5 of them reached out their hands and grabbed Murong Yu. Murong Yu's face darkened, and he groaned inwardly. This was truly a case of a tiger and a wolf in front, and a pursuing army behind. Wasn't this deliberately trying to kill Murong Yu? Murong Yu's heart was filled with killing intent. If he had the strength, he would definitely kill these ancestral sages one by one. But it was apparent that he didn't have the strength to do so at this stage. Even one ancestral saint wasn't someone he could contend against. Therefore, he spun in the air and shot toward the other side. But soon, another group of experts appeared in front of him. It was another group of ancestral sages. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In this short period of time, more than 20 ancestral sages had appeared around Morongyu, and it seemed that more and more people were flying over. It was obvious that these people were chasing after Morongyu. Morongyu even discovered a few experts from the monster race and the sacred race. All of them wanted to capture Morongyu, but each of them was wary of others. Their target was Morongyu, and they all wanted to capture Morongyu, but they had to be wary of others interfering. Therefore, the situation became delicate for a moment. Everyone surrounded Morongyu in the middle, sealing the void so that Morongyu couldn't escape. But they didn't make a move. Looking at the 20 ancestral sages, Morongyu's face darkened. Morongyu is from our heavenly thunder sect. Whoever dares to touch him will be going against our heavenly thunder sect. One of the ancestral sages glanced at the other ancestral sages with a gloomy face, and then transmitted his voice to them. The reason why they transmitted their voice was because they were worried that Morongyu would find out their identities. Although there was no way Morongyu could escape from their encirclement, it was better to be safe than sorry. What if Morongyu managed to escape? With the strength of the Seamless Branch, it was enough to annihilate the Heavenly Thunder Sect. Although the Heavenly Thunder Sect was also a superpower of the human race and the Holy World. In fact, which one of the superpowers present wasn't from a superpower? How could an ordinary superpower dare to have any ideas about Morongyu? What is the Heavenly Thunder Sect? The Taishu sect wants Morongyu no matter what. If you're smart, leave immediately. One of the Taishu sect's ancestral sages said coldly. One by one, the ancestral sages brought up their own superpowers, trying to intimidate the other ancestral sages. However, each ancestral sages had a superpower backing them, so they were not afraid of each other. Therefore, they confronted each other. The ancestral sages of the demon race and the sacred clan leaned against each other silently. In the human race's territory, they were alone, so the only way was to unite. Even so, they didn't dare to say anything. After all, if they were attacked by the human race's ancestral sages, they would definitely be in for a tragedy. While they were arguing, part of Morongyu's mind had already sunk into his body. Although he couldn't hear their voices, Morongyu had already guessed what they were talking about. Once these people reached an agreement or failed to reach an agreement, it would be time to make a move on Morongyu. When that time came, it would be Morongyu's doomsday. Therefore, Morongyu had to seize any opportunity and time to make himself stronger. At this time, he could only save himself, otherwise, no one would be able to save him. Confrontation Formula. Morongyu directly swallowed the light he caught into his body, then began to comprehend. It was also at this time that he found out that Turtle King Shui Yuanhua cultivated the confrontation formula of the 9 syllables. The confrontation formula focused on defense, and Morongyu had already seen it. After cultivating the confrontation formula, as long as he circulated this technique, he would be able to increase his defense. If he used the Acalanthus seal, he would be able to maximize his defense. The stronger he was, the stronger his defense. Just like how Turtle King Shui Yuanhua could defend against a sage ruler's attack when he was in the ancient sage realm, the stronger he was, the higher the level of the confrontation formula, and the more terrifying the power of the Acalanthus seal. In other words, if Turtle King Shui Yuanhua cultivated the army formula to the 2nd, 3rd, or even 4th stage or higher, his defense would not only be able to defend against a sage ruler, but also ancestral sages and primal chaos ancestral sages. Of course, the confrontation formula wasn't that easy to cultivate. The more heaven-defying a technique was, the harder it was to cultivate it successfully. Otherwise, the Turtle King would be able to run amok in the world. The 2nd and 3rd stages were fleeting. Morongyu also knew that it wasn't that easy to cultivate. However, he didn't ask for too much. He only needed to cultivate the 1st stage successfully. At the very least, his life-saving measures would be several times stronger than they were now. And so, Morongyu began to cultivate, Perhaps it was because Murong-yu had cultivated the 6 words. Although the confrontation formula had previously tried to escape Murong-yu's control, it was very obedient when Murong-yu cultivated it. It didn't take long for Murong-yu to successfully cultivate the confrontation formula. Since that's the case, let's see who's the real deal. Just as Murong-yu finished cultivating, an ancestral sage roared with an ashen face and threw a punch at another ancestral sage not far away. They had broken down. Boom, boom, boom. As the ancestral sage made his move, more ancestral sages made their moves as well. One by one, they locked onto their targets and attacked with incomparable ferocity. However, even more people grabbed at Murong-yu. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen large hands appeared beside Murong-yu, shattering the heavens and earth. They then swiftly grabbed at him. At this moment, an extremely strong aura of death rose in Murong-yu's heart. Some people wanted to capture Murong-yu, but others wanted to kill Murong-yu. In an instant, Murong-yu didn't have time to react. He only roared, "Acalanthus seal." Whoosh! A thin, black, and nearly transparent energy shield appeared out of thin air around Murong-yu's body, enveloping his entire body. Boom! 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 Just as the barrier opened up, the dozens of hands also slammed into the barrier. "You have to hold on for me." Murong-yu roared in his heart again and again. He raised his strength to the limit and crazily poured it into the shield. After a loud noise, the shield that Murong-yu had opened flickered violently. The terrifying power sent Murong-yu and the shield flying. During this process, Murong-yu felt a sweet taste in his throat and fiercely spat out a mouthful of blood. The shield that he had opened also exploded into millions of fragments with a bang. The Acalanthus seal had actually been broken, and it had been broken in the first use. It wasn't that the Acalanthus seal was trash, nor was it that Murong-yu's cultivation was too trashy. It was even inferior to the Turtle King Shui Yuanhua. It was that his enemies were too strong. There were more than a dozen ancestral sages. It should be known that Murong-yu was just a profound sage. A profound sage blocking more than a dozen ancestral sages 3 realms higher than him without dying. This achievement could definitely shock the entire sacred world. What? Seeing that Murong-yu had actually blocked the attacks of so many of them, the more than a dozen ancestral sages couldn't help but be taken aback. But soon, they attacked again. Murong-yu crazily spat out blood, and cracks appeared on his high-grade sacred artifact body. Although he had successfully blocked the attacks of more than a dozen ancestral sages, he was still seriously injured. Acalanthus seal. Seeing that everyone was attacking him, Murong-yu could only use the arrival technique again to resist the attacks of these ancestral sages. Chapter 1491. The defensive capabilities of the Akala seal were undoubtedly extremely powerful and could be called an absolute defense. However, the Akala seal had a very obvious flaw. Once the seal was used, Murong-yu had to maintain it at all times. Once the handprint was deformed, the seal of unmovable wisdom would automatically collapse, and the powerful defensive power would be completely gone. It was precisely because of this that when Turtle King Shui Yuanhua used the Akala seal, he could only passively endure the attacks. It wasn't that he didn't want to attack, but that he couldn't. This was something that Murong-yu had only just discovered. This could also be considered the flaw of the Akala seal. However, this was also very normal. There was no such thing as a perfect person. Nothing was perfect. Of course, nothing was absolute in this world. Although Murong-yu couldn't use his hands to attack, he could still move. Moreover, he didn't necessarily need to use his hands to attack. For example, there wouldn't be any problem if he used a sacred weapon or a magic treasure to attack. Just like Turtle King Shui Yuanhua, he only used his feet, body, and sacred weapons to attack. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk, although it was said that attacking was the best defense. However, in the face of more than 10 powerful ancestral sages, Murong-yu's attacks were so weak that they couldn't even withstand a single blow. Therefore, he gave up on attacking and poured all of his power into the Achilles seal. Incomparably violent and terrifying power that could destroy heaven and earth instantly bombarded the defensive barrier. The terrifying power surged in through the air. Suddenly, the defensive barrier erupted with an intense holy light. The black defensive barrier was trembling violently. Devour. Muron Yu's expression changed slightly when he felt the energy rushing into his body like a flood. He furiously roared in his heart. Suddenly, a huge suction force appeared out of thin air and began to devour the power that surged in. However, there was simply too much power that surged in. Muron Yu absorbed less than 1% of it. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk wave after wave of power bombarded Muron Yu's body violently. Immediately, cracks appeared on Muron Yu's high-grade sacred weapon body and rapidly expanded and spread. Numerous ghastly wounds appeared on his body, and blood spurted out like a fountain. Muron Yu's body was about to be crushed. Life force. Muron Yu clenched his teeth and roared. Instantly, a huge wave of life force surged up and washed over his body. As a result, the injuries on his body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, at this moment, bang! With a loud sound, Muron Yu's defensive barrier shattered for the second time. The power of more than a dozen ancestral sages was not something that could be easily defended against, not to mention that Muron Yu was still distracted by recovering his physical body. Therefore, at this moment, his defensive barrier had reached its limit and shattered. After shattering Muron Yu's defensive barrier, the large hands of the ancestral sages did not stop at all. They shattered billions of space-time and carried a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth as they viciously grabbed at Muron Yu. Some of the people who wanted to kill Muron Yu even used all their strength to punch or palm at Muron Yu, wanting to kill Muron Yu in one fell swoop. Just as Muron Yu was about to be captured or killed by the ancestral sages, a burst of arrogant laughter came from afar. Accompanying the laughter was an incomparably gloomy and cold aura. It was as if the world had turned from day to night at this moment. The cold aura enveloped the land, and even the ancestral sages present felt extremely cold as their hair stood on end. All the hair on Muron Yu's body stood on end, and an extremely strong aura of death appeared in his heart. In the blink of an eye, he turned his head to look. He saw three somewhat illusory figures stepping through the void and rapidly approaching from afar. Undead. When he saw those people, Muron Yu could not help but exclaim, because those people looked exactly the same as the undead he had seen before. However, the undead did not have much consciousness and could not be considered as living creatures. However, the experts coming toward him were living beings. It was just that their life characteristics were different from ordinary people. They were not spiritual bodies, but they were close to spiritual bodies. Their bodies constantly emitted a cold aura. At first glance, they looked like ghosts in the mortal world. That's right, these people were really ghosts. However, they were different from the ghosts in the mortal world. They were the Ingul tribe of the sacred clans in the sacred world. They were a special life form and were very powerful. Even among the sacred clans, they were an extremely powerful race. All of you are going to die, huh? The experts of the Ingul tribe laughed and attacked at the same time. Suddenly, hundreds of millions of ghosts waved their hands, and 100 ghosts walked in the night, covering the heaven and earth. They covered the sky and covered the earth as they rushed toward the people, including Muron Yu. Ingul tribe. The experts of the human clan frowned slightly, and at the same time, they had already unleashed their power. Holy light shot up into the sky from their bodies, and a terrifying power swept out in all directions. One move after another, he bombarded the three experts of the Ing Ghost clan with overwhelming attacks. Although their target was Muron Yu, the three experts of the Ingul tribe were too arrogant. They actually wanted to kill them as well. Moreover, the three experts of the Ingul tribe were more powerful than any of them. If they ignored them, they would be severely injured. Therefore, they attacked in anger. A great battle was about to break out. Murong Yu formed the Acalanthus seal again. At the same time, he used his fastest speed to fly to one side. He knew that everyone's target was him, and the only thing he could do now was to escape. "Kid, where are you going?" "Follow me back to the Ingul tribe." Just as Murong Yu's figure moved, a sinister voice suddenly sounded in his ears. At the same time, a chilly wind instantly enveloped his body, causing goosebumps to rise all over his body. At the same time, his heart was enveloped by an extremely strong aura of death. Whoosh! A large hand appeared above Murong Yu's head out of nowhere, and with lightning speed, it broke the void and grabbed at him. Murong Yu turned pale with fright, and his speed soared. However, no matter how fast he was, the large hand was even faster. Before he could speed up, the giant hand had already slammed into the defensive barrier. Boom! The defensive barrier, which could have withstood the attacks of more than 10 ancestor sages, could not withstand a single blow from the expert of the Ingul tribe, and it shattered immediately. However, the large hand of the expert of the Ingul tribe was not obstructed at all, and it slammed down directly. At this moment, Murong Yu used all his strength to increase his speed, but he could not escape from the large hand of the expert of the Ingul tribe. So what if he attacked? He could not resist. So what if he used Hichu Luoshu? Murong Yu wanted to use the supreme weapon, Purple Light Heavenly Civ Pagoda, to kill these people, but he did not have enough time. However, he was not a person who would sit still and wait for death. In a hurry, an extremely violent soul attack was released, and it swept towards the expert of the Ingul tribe. However, it was too late. Boom! The large hand of the Ingul tribe had already covered Murong Yu's body. Extremely violent power gushed out, and Murong Yu was about to be completely annihilated. However, at this moment, something strange happened. Boom! Just as Murong Yu was about to be killed, a dazzling holy light burst out from Murong Yu's body, and it shot up into the 9 heavens. How did this kid activate my seals so quickly? Just as the holy light shot up into the sky, somewhere in the endless starry sky, a tall and imposing expert frowned slightly. Not good. This kid is really in a life and death situation. The tall and imposing figure's face darkened. The seals he had placed on Murong Yu were to protect Murong Yu. Unless it was a life and death situation, Murong Yu would not be able to activate them even if he wanted to. Now, it could only be said that Murong Yu is really in danger. This kid has exceeded my expectations. He has actually reached the 6th level of the profound sage realm. Forget it. I won't interfere. How can one achieve great things without suffering? The voice was intermittent, and then the tall and imposing figure disappeared into the endless starry sky. In the holy world, when the holy light shot up into the sky, a shield that was countless times stronger than Murong Yu's immovable seal of wisdom appeared around Murong Yu, firmly surrounding him. As for the Een Ghost Clan's expert who was trying to kill Murong Yu, his hand was directly shattered into pieces. In fact, his entire body was sent flying. Murong Yu was shocked at first, and then he laughed loudly, because he remembered what this shield was all about. When he first joined the Seamless Society, the leader of the Seamless Society, who was also his master, had bestowed him with 3 powers. These 3 powers have been sealed in Murong Yu's body, and today, one of them had been activated. All of you must die. After laughing, Murong Yu's face turned cold, and waves of bone-chilling killing intent continuously erupted from his body. These people all wanted to capture him or kill him. The moment they made a move, Murong Yu had already written it down in the judgment. Kid, this is the power that your seniors sealed in your body, right? It's just one of them. I want to see how long you can last, a Een Ghost race expert said in an ear-piercing voice as he looked coldly at Murong Yu. That's right. The power of a shield on Murong Yu's body was rapidly dissipating. If these people were not only ancestral sages, but also primal chaos ancestral sages, the seal would automatically activate, but it could only withstand 1 blow. After 1 blow, it would shatter. But this was enough. It was enough for Murong Yu to kill all of them on the spot. Purple light, heavenly Civ Pagoda, come out. Murong Yu roared and directly took out his supreme weapon. Chapter 1492. Rumble. As soon as the supreme weapon, Purple Light Heavenly Gauze Tower, appeared, a five-colored light shot up into the sky and instantly covered an area of a few 100 million miles. It shot straight up into the sky. Moreover, with the supreme weapon as the center, an incomparably terrifying aura and a powerful supreme being's coercion swept out in all directions like a tidal wave. Wherever it passed, the void shattered and the earth was annihilated. It was as if the space had been destroyed and the world had come to an end. At this moment, except for Murong Yu, all the ancestral sages were enveloped by an extremely strong aura of death. The terrifying pressure pressed down on them, causing them to fall to the ground like meteors. What is this? In front of the terrifying oppression of the supreme weapon, all the ancestral sages felt as if they were ants in front of a sacred mountain. They were so insignificant and weak. This is a supreme weapon. Seeing the five-colored holy light that covered the sky, one of the ancestral sages cried out in surprise, although they had never seen a supreme weapon before. However, everyone knew that only supreme weapons could emit five-colored holy light. Of course, it did not mean that a supreme weapon could emit five-colored holy light. However, with such a terrifying oppression, they were sure that it was a supreme weapon. Run! Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. Under the strong aura of death, their expressions changed, and their first reaction was to run. All of you must die. When he thought of how he had almost been captured or killed by these people, Murong Yu's killing intent was extremely violent. Moreover, these people already knew that he had a supreme weapon and that he was a soul sage. He would never let them go. As Murong Yu shouted, the purple light heavenly gauze tower had already shot up into the sky and expanded in the wind. In an instant, it had grown to the size of a small mountain. Kill! Murong Yu shouted again. Almost at the same time, the purple light heavenly gauze tower shook violently. An invisible force was emitted from the supreme weapon. With the supreme weapon as the center, it spread out in all directions, killing everything in its path. Bang! 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 The power of a supreme weapon was equivalent to a supreme weapon. How terrifying was the strength of a supreme martial artist. He did not even need to lift a finger to kill an ancestral sage. Therefore, before these ancestral sages could escape, they were hit by the power of the supreme weapon. Without any suspense, the bodies of these ancestral saints, including the saint artifacts and magic treasures they had summoned, were instantly shattered into powder. More than 20 ancestral sages were instantly killed. Instant kill. If news of this battle were to spread, Murong Yu's name would definitely shake the world. After all, he was only a profound sage. Even though there was a difference of 3 major realms between them, he had still been able to kill over 20 ancestral sages. Only those at the peak of the ancestral saint realm could achieve such a feat. Although Murong Yu didn't rely on his own strength, he was still able to defeat Murong Yu. However, for every saint, his fortuitous encounters and various treasures were also a part of his strength. Plop! Plop! After more than 20 ancestral saints were killed, Murong Yu was powerless to float in the void because his strength had been exhausted, so he fell to the ground. At this time, Murong Yu wasn't even an ancestral saint. Even an ordinary saint would be able to kill him. Therefore, after dripping on the ground, Murong Yu did not hesitate to start recovering his strength. Now that he had no strength left in his body, he couldn't even take back the purple light heavenly Civ Pagoda, let alone leave this place. When Murong Yu fell to the ground, the purple light heavenly Civ Pagoda also lost its support and fell down, turning into a small pagoda and landing not far from Murong Yu. After all, a supreme weapon was a supreme weapon, although Murong Yu had successfully recognized him as its master. Even so, he could only stimulate a billionth of its power. But even so, it had exhausted his strength. It should be known that because Murong-yu had the Tree of Life, his strength was almost endless. Only a supreme weapon could instantly devour his strength, and the Tree of Life could not replenish it in time. Let's return to the moment when Murong-yu took out the Purple Light Heavenly Civ Pagoda. When the Purple Light Heavenly Civ Pagoda's power erupted, many supreme experts in the human territory of the Saints' world were alarmed. In particular, the supreme experts who had surpassed the peak of the primal chaos ancestral Saint realm instantly sensed the existence of the Purple Light Heavenly Civ Pagoda. A supreme weapon. A supreme weapon had appeared. These supreme experts who sensed the Purple Light Heavenly Civ Pagoda did not stop at all. They immediately shot in the direction of the Purple Light Heavenly Civ Pagoda. How fast were these peerless experts? Murong-yu did not know, because he had never seen it before. Although Yu Yangjia was powerful, he had not reached the level of these supreme experts. Just as Murong-yu sat down to recover his strength, he sensed several terrifying auras that were millions of times stronger than the ancestral saints shooting towards him at unimaginable speeds. In 1/100th of an instant, they had traversed billions of space-time, taking a large step closer to Murong-yu. Danger! Danger! Even if Murong-yu took out the Purple Light Heavenly Civ Pagoda, he would still be killed by these supreme experts. Although the supreme weapon was powerful, Murong-yu was unable to unleash any greater power. Although these supreme experts were not as strong as supremes, they were relatively close. Unless it was an expert of the same level who could unleash the supreme weapon's power, no one else could affect them. Murong-yu felt an unprecedented sense of danger. In reality, from the moment Murong-yu took out the Purple Light Heavenly Civ Pagoda to killing over 20 ancestral saints and sitting down to recover his strength, only a few seconds had passed. One could only imagine how fast those peerless experts were. Now, with every 100th of an instant that passed, Murong-yu's heart felt heavy, and the aura of death became 100 times stronger. In the end, Murong-yu's soul trembled violently because of the aura of death that enveloped his heart. He even felt fear. Tree of Life. Murong-yu roared in his heart as he urged the Tree of Life again and again. Suddenly, the hundreds of millions of roots of the Tree of Life in the void trembled rapidly. Strands of chaotic energy were constantly devoured, rushing into Murong-yu's body like a torrent, replenishing Murong-yu's strength. After being replenished, Murong-yu had the strength to take out the Hichu Luo Shu. Then he grabbed the Purple Radiant Heavenly Roar Pagoda and rushed into the He-Tu and the Book of the Luo. Reverse space-time. The instant he entered the He-Tu and Luo inscribed scroll, Murong-yu erupted with all his strength and disrupted the space-time of the space outside. At the same time, he activated the Hichu Luoshu's teleportation ability and directly left the place. The Hichu Luoshu's teleportation ability didn't require Murong-yu's strength at all. As a result, he had unscrupulously converted all his power into time force, disrupting the space-time of that space. Although Murong-yu had killed those ancestral saints, no one knew that he was a soul saint and that he had a supreme weapon. However, the peerless experts in the saints' world still had many ways to watch the battle between them. At that time, they would know that Murong-yu had a supreme weapon. Murong-yu had already become the target of the various large forces, and if they knew that he had a supreme weapon, they wouldn't send any more ancestral saints. Instead, they would send primal chaos ancestral saints, or even peak existences among primal chaos ancestral saints. Even large forces like the heaven-suppressing sect might come out in full force. This was because a supreme weapon was equivalent to a supreme being. If the heaven-suppressing sect obtained a supreme weapon, they would definitely become one of the human race's holy lands, becoming the 11th holy land. It was the same for the other large forces. Therefore, Murong-yu had to protect his secret to the greatest extent. At least, he had to do this before he had the strength to protect himself. Boom! Just as Hichu Luo Shu was teleported, a tall figure filled with an extremely violent aura suddenly stepped out of the void and arrived at the mountain range where Murong-yu had been. Rumble. As soon as this expert appeared, the heaven and earth trembled violently, as if an earthquake had occurred. At this moment, Muronyu, who was in Hichu Luoshu, suddenly felt his entire body turn cold and stiff. An extremely strong aura of death instantly enveloped his entire body. Swish! In his eyes, a huge hand that stretched across the heaven and earth suddenly shattered billions of space-time and grabbed at him. This peerless expert had discovered Muronyu, who was escaping. At this moment, Muronyu was so shocked that his soul almost stiffened. A feeling of terror spread from the bottom of his heart and instantly enveloped his entire body. It's over. Murongyu's entire body turned ice-cold as an aura of despair enveloped his entire body. Boom! Perhaps it had sensed Murongyu's despair, or perhaps it had sensed that Murongyu's life was in great danger. The second of the three powers sealed in Murongyu's body by the Tao Master of the Seamless Sect automatically activated. His first barrier had already shattered when he killed the 20 or so ancestral saints. An incomparably huge barrier of power immediately enveloped Murongyu and even the entire Hichu Luoshu. With a loud bang, the barrier blocked the huge hand that could annihilate heaven and earth in time. However, it only lasted for an instant before it shattered into pieces. However, this short period of time was still not enough for Murongyu to escape. That huge hand, like a shadow attached to the body, once again grabbed at him. Boom! The third power was activated once again. In the blink of an eye, he blocked the giant hand once again. However, it still couldn't stop the huge hand and shattered in an instant. Chapter 1493. At this point, the three powers sealed within Murongyu's body by the Seamless Society's Tao Master had all been destroyed. If Murongyu were to encounter such a situation in the future, no one would be able to protect him. He could only rely on the present. Now, the two powers had been annihilated, but they were unable to stop the huge hand that was grabbing at him. It wasn't that the opponent was too strong or that the Seamless Society's Tao Master was too weak. It was just one of the powers, and it probably wasn't even a millionth of the Seamless Society's Tao Master's time. But even so, it was enough. Although the two powers couldn't stop the Peerless Expert's attack, they could at least delay the Peerless Expert for a moment. And this moment was enough to save Murongyu's life. With a swoosh, Hichu Luoshu disappeared into thin air. Rumble. Just as the He-2 and the Book of the Luo disappeared, the huge hand grabbed down. Although he couldn't grab the He-2 and the inscription of the Luo, he was able to crush the void. Even the black spatial turbulence surged out like a torrent. These spatial turbulence, which could annihilate a sage king and even an ancestor sage, posed no threat to the huge hand. Before it could even get close to the huge hand, it was already crushed into powder by the invisible power of the huge hand. Swoosh! 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 At this moment, the figures of experts who emitted a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth appeared one after another. Even the weakest of these people was a primal chaos ancestor sage. As for whether these people would think that the supreme weapon had been snatched by the peerless expert who had arrived first, and whether a huge battle would break out between them, all of this no longer had anything to do with Murongyu. Cough, cough. After a teleportation, Murongyu returned to the true martial temple. That's right, it was the true martial temple. This was the closest teleportation point to Murongyu. Moreover, the most dangerous place was the safest place. Even the upper echelons of the true martial temple wouldn't have expected Murongyu to return here. After recovering a portion of his strength, Murongyu finally left and returned to the God world. Only in the God realm was the safest place. Even the almighty experts of the holy world were unable to come here. Puff! When Murongyu spat out a mouthful of blood, his body, which had been severely injured by that peerless expert, finally recovered to its peak state. Fortunately, Murongyu had 3 strands of power sealed by the Seamless Tao Master. Otherwise, Murongyu would have been killed long ago. Even so, his physical body, which had reached the level of a high-grade saint artifact, was almost annihilated. Fortunately, his soul wasn't damaged. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to recover in such a short time. Hichu, what realm has that person reached? Murong-yu opened his eyes and immediately asked Hichu about it. How is his strength so terrifying? A strange look flashed across Hichu's eyes, but it disappeared in a flash and was quickly concealed by him. However, Murong-yu was still sensitive enough to notice the cold, killing intent in Hichu's eyes. Murong-yu was surprised because he had never seen Hichu have such dense killing intent toward someone, and he even concealed it in front of him. Could that person have something to do with Zhao Yun's death? Murong-yu pondered, but he didn't ask. He's at least a 9th-rank chaotic ancestor saint. Only the 10 great holy lands and the heaven-suppressing sect have such an existence. Hichu said indifferently, 9th-rank chaotic ancestor saint. Murong-yu was speechless. One had to know that apart from the sovereigns and supremes in the holy world, 9th-rank chaotic ancestor saints were peak experts. However, there was only one sovereign and 10 autarchs. In other words, an expert of this level has already made a move against me. Could that person be one of the 9 great holy lands? Murong-yu frowned and said with a gloomy face. An ancestor saint expert was already a disaster for Murong-yu. With his current strength, he could only run if he faced a 1st-rank chaotic ancestor saint, and he might not even be able to escape. However, there was still a glimmer of hope to escape. However, if he encountered a chaotic ancestor saint, Murong-yu wouldn't even have the chance to escape. Even if he took out the purple radiant heavenly Civ Pagoda, he wouldn't be able to escape, unless he had a life-saving talisman like the seal of the Seamless Sex Tao Master. However, Murong-yu didn't have such things on him. This was the tragedy of being a genius. He was strong, far stronger than other cultivators of the same level. However, it would attract the attention of even stronger experts. Originally, he had been the limelight in the true martial temple, which made him an influential figure. If the fact that he had a supreme weapon was exposed, it would definitely attract the chaotic ancestors saints to kill him. Unless Murong-yu hid in the God realm or the Seamless sect in the future, he wouldn't be able to gain a foothold in the holy world. Moreover, in the Seamless sect or the God realm, how could Murong-yu increase his strength? This was what Murong-yu was worried about. What he didn't know was that everything he was worried about had already happened. Even if Murong-yu reversed the space-time of his previous battle when he left, he was still a profound sage. Although his methods were strong, they hadn't reached the level of heaven-defying. Moreover, the people who had come at that time were all peerless experts of the holy world. Under the influence of some powerful expert, the scene of Murong-yu taking out a supreme weapon and killing more than 20 ancestor saints appeared clearly in front of those peerless experts. With regard to Murong-yu's strength, these peerless experts didn't express anything. To them, no matter how heaven-defying Murong-yu's strength was, as long as he hadn't become a supreme, he would at most be on equal footing with them. They had seen many peerless geniuses, and they themselves were peerless geniuses. How difficult was it to become a supreme? Only they had a deep understanding of it. However, they weren't interested in Murong-yu, but they were very interested in the purple light heavenly Civ Pagoda. There was no lack of people from the 10 great holy lands present, but even the 10 great holy lands didn't mind if they had more supreme weapons. After all, a supreme weapon that could display its power was equivalent to a supreme. If a holy land had more than one supreme weapon, it could definitely suppress other holy lands, and its status would be higher. If other forces that weren't a holy land had a supreme weapon, they could also become a holy land in one fell swoop. Therefore, when they knew that Murong-yu had a supreme weapon, these people had already decided to track down Murong-yu and seize the supreme weapon. And for some reason, this matter was spread out. In a short period of time, a gust of wind blew in the holy world, sweeping across the world. Everyone knew about it. There were indeed many people who were envious of Murong-yu's opportunities and strength. However, there were even more people who wanted to seize his supreme weapon. For a time, the human race of the holy world was searching for Murong-yu's traces everywhere. From the primal chaos ancestor sage to the ordinary saints, everyone was searching. Bronze Martial City. Yu Mengqing, Mu Liue, Kurlan, and Situ Xian gathered together, looking at each other with gloomy expressions. After a long silence, Kurlan couldn't help but ask, "Big Baddie should be fine, right?" Murongyu's matter had already spread throughout the holy world, even in a small place like Bronze Martial City. As Murongyu's women, Yu Mengqing and the others were naturally worried. "Let's not panic. We have to believe that Murong will be fine. Isn't there nothing wrong with his soul jade slip?" Zhao Jiqing wasn't here, so naturally, Yu Mengqing had become their temporary big sister. Mu Liue smiled bitterly. "I don't know what this guy is doing. He left the true martial temple not long after joining and was hunted down by them. Now that he has joined the Infernal Society, I thought he would settle down. Who knew that he would make the whole world his enemy? Hasn't he always been like this?" Situ Xian shook her head helplessly, forcing a helpless smile on her face. "What we need to do now is to increase our strength. This is the only way we can help Murong," Yu Mengqing said with a determined look on her face. While Yu Mengqing and the others were discussing, in a place extremely far away from them, in the Phoenix clan. Dressed in white, the devastatingly beautiful Zhao Jiqing stood alone on a mountain peak, looking into the distance with a cold expression. At this moment, her realm had already risen to the Saint Ruler realm, and it was even a high-level Saint Ruler. Her strength was increasing at an extremely fast speed. "Murong, you must hold on. Soon, I will return to help you." Zhao Jiqing's eyes flashed with a cold light, and then her figure flashed, disappearing from the mountain peak. Somewhere in the human territory, in the main hall of a small sect called Shenzhen, a table was slapped into dust, and then a tall figure stood up abruptly, exuding a terrifying aura. "These bastards actually want to kill the Lord and steal the initiative. Brothers, let's kill these bastards." "Woof!" A large black dog stood up, and then said in a human voice, "I say, Little Fire, how are you going to kill those people? Are you going to rely on your imperishable stage strength? Old Black, are you looking down on me?" The fiery-eyed golden ape glared at the large black dog, his face full of displeasure. "All right, the two of you, calm down. It's not like you don't know Father's strength. How can those bastards be Father's match?" At this moment, a young, handsome man on the main seat said indifferently. He was Murong Yu's eldest son, Murong Xian. Murong Yi also said, "With our current strength, we can't fight against a slightly stronger force. I think we should do our best to increase our strength, and at the same time, pay attention to news of my father. I believe that our Shenzhen will suppress the holy world one day. We will make all the saints tremble at our feet. Suppress Shenzhen, suppress Shenzhen." So this was what it meant to suppress the entire holy world. This was probably the ambition of Murong Xian and the others, right? Chapter 1494. In the holy world, everyone wanted to find Murong Yu, but Murong Yu was still in the god world. At this time, Murong Yu was sitting cross-legged in the Hichu Luoshu world and began to check the changes of the 9 syllables mantra that he cultivated. When he obtained the confrontation formula, the 9 words mantra that he had previously cultivated seemed to have advanced. However, Murong Yu didn't have time to check at that time, and now he had the leisure time. First, he looked at the confrontation formula. However, there were no changes to the confrontation formula. It was only at the first stage that it had the first stage of the Akalanthus seal. Because of this seal, Murong Yu's life-saving ability skyrocketed. He could even take the attack of a first-rank ancestor saint head-on without any threat to his life. When he cultivated it successfully, he could take the joint attack of more than 10 ancestor saints head-on. Although the Akalanthus seal only lasted for a moment before it was broken, it still blocked the attack, didn't it? As a powerful saint, attack, defense, and speed, which one was more important? Murong Yu was definitely talking about speed. With extreme speed, his life-saving ability would be greatly enhanced. After all, The faster the speed, the easier it was to escape. Moreover, speed was indispensable in a pursuit. The army formula had advanced from the 4th stage to the 5th stage. With a thought, with a bang, 3 pairs of pure black wings appeared on Murongyu's back. Streaks of lightning-like chaotic energy flowed between the wings, looking noble and powerful. With a whoosh, Murongyu soared into the sky, and then with a fierce flap of the demon wings, he disappeared on the spot. After roaming in the sky, Murongyu landed on the ground again. Although it's just an extra pair of wings, my speed is more than twice as fast as before. Now my speed is comparable to a first-rank ancestor saint, right? Murongyu said to himself with a smile on his face. He had also made a breakthrough in the battle character art, but the increase in his combat strength was not obvious. Murongyu was not expecting him to be able to surpass 3 major realms. It was just a little stronger than before. Previously, Murongyu had the strength to cross 2 major realms, but now he had an additional minor realm. In other words, he had the strength to cross 2 major realms and 1 minor realm. Of course, Murongyu was not disappointed. The higher one's cultivation level was, the harder it was to kill enemies who were stronger than oneself. It was not just him. It was the same for the entire Saints world. Murongyu was already very satisfied to be able to maintain the strength of 2 realms above him. In addition, the other 9 syllables of truth had also increased by a small realm. Now that the Zai formula had broken through to the 5th stage, his ability to travel through space had become even stronger. The distance he could travel through space had increased by 10 times. Combined with the demonic wings, even a Tier 2 Ancestor Sage would not be able to catch up to Murongyu. Of course, his control over space was getting stronger and stronger. His spatial slash, spatial shackles, and other abilities had also increased exponentially. The Formation Character Sutra had 2 very practical abilities. One was invisibility, and the other was seeing through people's minds. Murongyu did not know how powerful the invisibility ability was, but it was definitely much stronger than before, and the ability to see through people's minds had also increased. Now, if Murongyu used the Formation Character Sutra, he could even see through the minds of experts who were 2 major realms higher than him. Of course, the premise was that the opponent was not vigilant and did not set up any defenses. Otherwise, it would be useless. The breakthrough of the Zhe formula gave Murongyu a pleasant surprise. Originally, Murongyu's soul pond had already reached a size of 10,000 miles. Now, it had increased to 20,000 miles. It was almost equivalent to a soul sage of the 4th heaven of the 3 stars realm. And Murongyu was only at the 2nd rank of the 3 stars realm. However, although his soul pond had more than doubled in size, the realm of his soul did not increase. Of course, this was not the reason why Murongyu was pleasantly surprised. He was pleasantly surprised that after the breakthrough of the Zhe formula, he obtained a few more combat skills for soul attacks. In fact, they were not new combat skills. They were just upgraded versions of the previous 3 combat skills. Divine Soul Fist. The Divine Soul Fist was the upgraded version of the Divine Soul Fist. In the state of the Divine Soul Fist, one punch could produce a soul attack 10 times more powerful than Murongyu's. However, the consumption of energy was extremely large. Ordinary soul sages could not perform it multiple times. The power of the Divine Soul Fist was at least twice as powerful as that of the Divine Soul Fist. However, the consumption of soul power was reduced by 10%. In other words, with 90% of the previous consumption of soul power, the attack could be twice as powerful as before. This undoubtedly made Murongyu's soul attack more powerful. In addition to the Divine Soul Fist, the previous Soul Devouring Slash had also been upgraded to the Soul Slash. Like the Divine Soul Fist, the upgraded Soul Slash was more powerful than before, but it consumed less soul power. Moreover, the Soul Devouring Slash consumed much less soul power than the Divine Soul Fist. Therefore, Murongyu usually chose to use the Soul Devouring Slash instead of the Divine Soul Fist or the Sky Destroying Stars when he used soul attacks. The sky-destroying stars was Murong Yu's only group attack skill. Once used, it could destroy a large number of the enemy's soul. It was definitely a terrifying skill in group battles. After the upgrade, the sky-destroying stars had become the sky-destroying stars. The area it covered was 10 times more than before. Its power was also several times more powerful than before. However, the consumption had decreased by more than 30%. The successive breakthroughs of the 9 syllables of truth had increased Murong Yu's actual combat power by at least 50%. With his current strength, it was enough to kill a high-level Sage King. Even if it was a super expert of the Ancestor Sage realm, Murong Yu could still fight. Of course, this was only limited to low-level Ancestor Sages. If he encountered a mid-level Ancestor Sage, Murong Yu would still not be his opponent. After all, he was only a Profound Sage, a 6th-level Profound Sage. In fact, if he did not have the Acolyte Seal, Murong Yu would not be able to block the attack of a 1st-level Ancestor Sage. If he was not a Soul Sage, his attack would not be able to shake the Ancestor Sage at all. However, he had these abilities. This was his heaven-defying ability. In the following time, Murong Yu continued to cultivate in the Hichu Lu Oshu for a period of time. After mastering more powerful combat power, he made a trip back to the Holy World. However, as soon as he appeared in the Holy World, he knew that he was the enemy of the entire world. Immediately, his face could not help but darken. Now, apart from Shenzhen's people and the Infernal Society's people, everyone else and all the forces were eyeing Murong Yu covetously. In fact, Murong Yu even discovered that many primal chaos ancestor sages were walking around in the Holy World. Their goal was self-evident. It was Murong Yu. The pressure on Murong Yu suddenly increased explosively. He could not even deal with the more powerful ancestor sages now. If he encountered one, he would definitely die. The previous scene was still vivid in his mind. Moreover, as long as he appeared in the Holy World now, there was a possibility that his identity would be exposed. Once his identity was exposed, with the primal chaos ancestor sage's great abilities, it would be difficult for Murong Yu to escape. If I were a sage ruler, I would not be afraid of ordinary primal chaos ancestor sages. If I had the strength of an ancestor sage, I would not hesitate to kill even primal chaos ancestor sages. Murong Yu returned to the Hichu Lu Oshu with an ashen face and murderous intent surging. However, he was only a profound sage now. How could it be so easy to increase his realm? In the territory of the human race, he would be hunted down as soon as he appeared. This was extremely disadvantageous for him to increase his strength. If he hid in the God realm or the Infernal Society, how long would it take for him to increase his realm? He had to go everywhere to gain experience and search for treasures. Only then would he be able to increase his realm at the fastest speed. Hichu, you are more familiar with the Holy World. Is there any place you can go to gain experience? Like the one, Zhen's secret realm? Murong Yu found Hichu and asked directly. Hichu shook his head. Murong Yu had become the enemy of the whole world too early, which was beyond his expectations. He knew some secret realms, but they were not places that Murong Yu could enter at the moment. However, ordinary secret realms were of no use to Murong Yu. Do you still remember the Holy Tomb? The Holy Tomb of the Huaxia cultivation world? Hichu suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Holy Tomb. Murong Yu was startled. The Holy Tomb was originally called the Immortal Tomb. However, after Murong Yu became an immortal, he found that he still could not enter. Therefore, it was upgraded to the Divine Tomb. But in the end, he knew that even ordinary sages did not dare to step in. Therefore, it became the Holy Tomb in the end. The flow of time there is extremely terrifying. Even if it's just the periphery, ordinary sages can't bear it. As for the flow of time inside, we don't know. Murong Yu said with a slight frown. Hichu smiled faintly. Have you forgotten that you have already reached the profound sage realm? Time and lifespan are no longer a burden to you. No matter how fast the flow of time there is, it won't affect you. Now is the time to go and find out. Murong Yu's eyes suddenly lit up. He had forgotten about this. Now, as long as the holy world did not collapse and reincarnate, he was immortal. With a thought, Murong sent a message to Yu Mengqing and the others to let them know that he was safe and sound. Then, he appeared in the cultivation world. The reason why he did not go to see them was that Murong had already become the enemy of the whole holy world. If the relationship between him and Yu Mengqing was discovered, it would be disadvantageous to Yu Mengqing and the others. Murong did not want to trap the women in the Hichu Luoshu world again and lose their freedom. Murong had reached the profound sage realm from a mortal. It had only been a few eras. For those powerful sages, it was just a blink of an eye. But for the cultivation world, it was countless reincarnations. The mountains and rivers were still the same, but things had already changed. At this time, although there were many forces in the Huaxia cultivation world. However, Shenzhen was the most powerful and domineering force. Murong had just appeared outside the immortal burial ground when a disciple of the sage sect blocked his path with murderous intent. Without a word, the disciple wanted to kill him. This showed how domineering Shenzhen was. Chapter 1495. The immortal tomb is the forbidden ground of my primal chaos Shenzhen. No one is allowed to come within 10,000 miles of it. Violators will be killed. Now that you're within 10,000 miles, you can kill yourself. The youth from the primal chaos Shenzhen looked at Murong and said indifferently. At the same time, there were a few people flying over from other locations of the immortal tomb. They probably got the news. However, when these people flew over, they all looked at Murong with disdain. It was as if they were looking at a dead person. When did the Shenzhen have such rules? Murong expression remained calm. However, his heart was burning with rage. The Shenzhen was created by him. Whether it was the cultivation world, immortal world, God world, or saints world, it was all his hard work. Moreover, the sect that Murong wanted to create could be very powerful and could unify this world. However, it definitely couldn't be so tyrannical. This kind of tyrannical wasn't just tyrannical anymore. It was unreasonable and unscrupulous. Could the cultivation world's Shenzhen have fallen to such a state? Murong's heart flashed with killing intent. The cultivation world Shenzhen was the same as the Shenzhen of the immortal world and God world. They were all the foundation of the Shenzhen of the saints world. In just a few epochs, the cultivation world's Shenzhen had fallen to such a state. Once these disciples ascended, they would affect the Shenzhen of the immortal world and God world. Even after ascending to the saints world, their temperament would be the same as now. In the long run, the entire Shenzhen would fall. Once a sect fell, it wouldn't be far from destruction. Murong definitely wouldn't allow the Shenzhen to fall to such a state under the rule of some people. Therefore, he gave up on entering the immortal tomb. Instead, he wanted to see how far the Shenzhen had fallen. In the world of cultivation, we Shenzhen are the rules. If we call for your death at midnight, you definitely won't live past midnight. Another disciple of Shenzhen stepped forward and looked at Murong indifferently. Hearing this, Murong sneered. These scum of Shenzhen were all black in color, and one of them was so black that it was shining. In other words, they were all star-level villains. What if I don't? Then I'll end you. The Shenzhen disciple who was the first to block Murong shouted impatiently. He took a step forward and punched towards Murong. Murong, who was originally in an extremely bad mood, couldn't help but laugh when he saw this spirit-severing stage cultivator attacking him. What was a mantis trying to stop a chariot? An ant trying to shake a tree? This was a very typical case. However, Murong's smile was seen as a sneer by the disciples of Shenzhen. They thought that Murong was looking down on them. Therefore, another person also attacked at the same time. He either took out a magic treasure or a flying sword and attacked Murong. You're all guilty of the death penalty. Using my Shenzhen's cultivation methods and resources to act tyrannically is simply courting death. Today, I'll take back everything from you. Murong's eyes flashed with a cold light. At the same time, he pointed his finger. Bang! 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 There wasn't any earth-shattering aura erupting. It was just an ordinary finger pointing. However, this one finger had directly broken the cultivation methods of these 5 disciples of the sage sect, and even their meridians had been smashed into smithereens. The magic treasures they took out, or everything in their bodies or storage rings, were also smashed into powder by Murong Yu's finger. How dare you cripple us? Faced with this big change, the 5 people were stunned at first, then they roared angrily. Due to the fact that they were in the void, they quickly fell to the ground while roaring furiously. Right now, they were just ordinary mortals. In fact, they couldn't even be considered as mortals. If they were to fall like this, they would definitely become a pile of mud. However, just as they were panicking, a force pulled them back. It was Murong Yu who attacked. It wasn't that Murong Yu didn't want to kill them or was merciful, but now was not the time. Who is it? How dare you attack a disciple of my sage sect in the cultivation world? You're really courting death. At this moment, an angry roar was heard. Following that, an incomparably large hand traversed through the void, shattering the void in the distance as it ruthlessly slammed down on Murong Yu. It's the sex elder. Little bastard, you're dead. Seeing the huge hand, the disciples of Shenzhen who were crippled by Murong Yu looked at Murong Yu with hatred and ferocity. Murong Yu sneered and only glanced at the huge hand. As a result, the big hand shattered with a bang. Immediately, the disciples of the sage sect let out a cry of surprise because they saw that the sect guarding the immortal tomb, whose strength had reached the late stage of crossing calamity, was flying over while spurting out blood. Furthermore, that elder was also crippled like them. Who is this person? How can his strength be so terrifying? The 5 people were deeply frightened. They didn't even see Murong Yu attack, but he had already crippled a powerful elder. Who are you? Do you know that I'm an elder of Chaos Shenzhen? Our Chaos Shenzhen is the biggest sect in the immortal world and God world. If you provoke our Shenzhen, you will have no way to enter the heavens and no door to the earth. The sect's elder said with fear in his eyes, but at the same time, he put on a strong front. Murong Yu was too lazy to talk nonsense with these people. He snorted coldly, took a step, and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in one of the 5 major cities in the cultivation world, Cloud Water Room. As for the disciples of Shenzhen, he had already detained them and hid them. After staying in Cloud Water Room for a while, Murong Yu was even angrier. This was because he found that the cultivation world was full of complaints about Shenzhen. They were tyrannical, unscrupulous, and wantonly attacked other sections, robbing, killing, and so on. As long as Murong Yu could think of something bad, Shenzhen did it. Moreover, there were many things that Murong Yu didn't think of. Even so, the people of other sects only dared to be angry at Shenzhen, but they didn't dare to say anything. This was because Shenzhen was strong. Afraid that it was just a one-sided story, Murong Yu spent the rest of the time visiting various places in the cultivation world. However, what he heard was mostly the same. Now, Glory's sect had completely fallen. Damn it! Murong Yu was abnormally angry. He picked up the disciples of Shenzhen and took a step forward. He was already inside Shenzhen. Because he didn't hide his body, Murong Yu was discovered as soon as he entered Shenzhen. Moreover, he was still carrying the disciples of Shenzhen, who were on their last breaths, and walked step by step into the depths of Shenzhen. Even a blind person could see that Murong Yu didn't come with good intentions. Therefore, countless powerhouses immediately rose into the air and rushed towards Murong Yu. Wang Chao, get out here! Even though he was surrounded by the disciples of the sage sect, Murong Yu didn't show any signs of nervousness. After all, he was a dignified, profound sage. If he showed any signs of nervousness while being surrounded by these people, then he could just go and die. Bold, you dare to call the Holy Master by his name? You're simply courting death. Before Murong Yu's voice fell, a powerhouse of Shenzhen roared, took a step forward, and punched towards Murong Yu. The person who attacked was a powerhouse in the transformation stage. Murong Yu turned his head and glanced at this powerhouse. It was just a glance. With a bang, The body of this powerhouse in the transformation stage exploded, turning into a cloud of blood mist. He couldn't be more dead. Immediately, everyone was taken aback by Murong Yu's strength. Immortal? He's definitely an immortal. This thought appeared in everyone's mind. Therefore, even more powerhouses took action. Rumble. Countless forces poured down like a torrential rain, but before they could get close to Murong Yu, they automatically dissipated into nothingness. Murong Yu didn't make a move, but just coldly looked at them. Everyone who came into contact with his gaze exploded into pieces. They were all killed. He must be an immortal. He might be an enemy from the immortal world. Quickly go and inform the great elders. Someone roared in shock and anger. At the same time, these people quickly retreated. Some people even rushed towards the depths of Shenzhen as if they were flying. They should be reporting to the great elders. Murong Yu didn't stop them. He just stood in the sky and coldly looked at all of this. He wanted to see what those people in high positions were like. If it was because of their connivance or because they took the lead, then Murong Yu would kill all of them. He would rather kill all of them than let them destroy Shenzhen. Who are you? Why have you come to Shenzhen and started a massacre? At this moment, a middle-aged man with a gloomy face stepped out from the depths of Shenzhen and looked at Murong Yu with a malicious expression. The Saint Lord is out. The Saint Lord is out. Seeing the middle-aged man, the surrounding disciples of Shenzhen seemed to have found their backbone and became excited. The middle-aged man was the current Saint Lord of Shenzhen, Wang Chao. He was an half-step immortal and could be considered a top powerhouse in the cultivation world. However, Murong Yu's face became gloomy. This was because Wang Chao's body was covered in a layer of shiny black light. A star-level villain. I want to know if Shenzhen has fallen under your leadership, or has it already fallen? Murong Yu looked at Wang Chao with an indifferent expression. His eyes flashed with cold, killing intent. Who are you? When did Shenzhen, fall? Wang Chao was furious and continued. If you know what's good for you, quickly destroy your own cultivation and I will spare your life. Otherwise, even if Shenzhen, am no match for you, the immortals of Shenzhen can easily kill you. Before Murong Yu could answer, a furious roar came from the depths of Shenzhen. How dare you act so presumptuously in Shenzhen? You must be tired of waiting. Then, Murong Yu saw a group of half-step and first-step immortals rushing towards him with murderous intent. Chapter 1496. Murong Yu crossed his arms in front of his chest and stood in the air with an indifferent expression. He coldly looked at the group of half-step and first-step immortals who had surrounded him with murderous intent. Among these people, there were some whose light was as black as ink. However, there were also some whose light was white. This meant that not everyone in Shenzhen was a bad person. This made the furious Murong Yu feel slightly comforted. However, perhaps because Murong Yu had barged into Shenzhen without permission, both good and bad people were filled with murderous intent towards him. After all, he was now the invader. Who was it that caused such a foul atmosphere in Shenzhen? Murong Yu's gaze was like a knife as it slowly swept across the faces of everyone present. Finally, it stopped on Wang Chao's face. Hearing Murong Yu's questioning tone, Wang Chao and the others were furious. Especially Wang Chao. He was now the holy lord of Shenzhen. Who dare to question him? Who do you think you are? Since when did you have the right to meddle in Shenzhen's affairs? Cripple your own cultivation immediately or kill without mercy, Wang Chao said with murderous intent. I'm really going to meddle in this matter. Murong Yu looked coldly at Wang Chao. However, before he finished speaking, Wang Chao had already taken a step forward and viciously punched Murong Yu's head. He wanted to kill Murong Yu. Almost at the same time, the half-step and first-step immortals of Shenzhen roared and attacked Murong Yu. Perhaps because they felt that Murong Yu was a strong opponent, these people had already discussed how to kill Murong Yu. Seeing this, Murong Yu only snorted disdainfully. Immediately, the terrifying power that was pouring down from the sky suddenly disappeared, vanishing from the world. As for those who had attacked, they were frozen in the void, unable to move at all. With Murong Yu's strength as a profound sage, he only needed a thought to suppress them. My Shenzhen, I will not allow anyone to destroy it. Whoever dares to destroy it will die, Murong Yu said in a cold voice. At the same time, he pointed with his finger. With a loud bang, Shenzhen's holy lord Wang Chao suddenly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. He couldn't be any more dead. He killed the sect leader. This demon, hurry up and invite the immortals from the immortal world to descend to the mortal world. Shenzhen immediately became excited. This was the first holy lord to die since the establishment of Shenzhen. Amidst the shock, some cursed, some were terrified, and some even directly attacked Murong Yu. However, some people calmed down. This was because they had clearly heard Murong Yu's words. My Shenzhen, who did Shenzhen belong to? Even the previous holy lords wouldn't say such a thing. Although they were holy lords, Shenzhen definitely didn't belong to them. There was only one person who dared to say such a thing, and that person was the founder of the primal chaos Shenzhen, Murong Yu. Who is he? For a moment, those who were clear-headed looked at Murong Yu seriously. It didn't matter much when they saw it, but they were shocked when they saw it. Who is this young man? Why does he look so familiar? Whether it was the great elders of Shenzhen or the ordinary disciples, they all felt a sense of familiarity when looking at Murong Yu. Murong Yu gave them a familiar feeling. It was as if they had seen Murong Yu before. Chua! Suddenly, a picture scroll appeared in the hands of one of Shenzhen's disciples on the ground. There was nothing on the picture scroll, only the image of a young man looking down on the world. He looks very similar to our founder. This Shenzhen's disciple looked at the young man in the picture scroll, then looked at Murong Yu in the air and muttered to himself. Boom! This disciple's voice wasn't loud, but everyone present was a powerhouse. Even if it was as soft as a mosquito's buzz, they could still hear it clearly. In an instant, many of the elders and great elders present felt as if a thunderbolt had suddenly exploded in their minds. There was even a great elder who rushed in front of the disciple, holding Murong Yu's picture, and snatched it away. Then, his gaze went back and forth between the picture and Murong Yu. Exactly the same. The more he looked, the more the great elder of Shenzhen's became. In the end, his body began to tremble. From a slight tremble at the beginning to a violent tremble at the end. He knew that the young man in front of him was Shenzhen's founder, Murong Yu. Only Murong Yu had the qualifications to say my Shenzhen. It was no wonder that Murong Yu was so angry. Shenzhen was built by him, but had fallen in their hands. But how'd he come down from above? The more the great elder thought about it, the more frightened he became. In the end, he knelt on the ground with a plop. Disciple song, Zhou greets the founder. As he knelt, the great elder called Song Zhou shouted loudly. In an instant, everyone present was shocked. Their minds also went blank. For a moment, they didn't know what was going on. Why did the great elder call him the founder? Could it be that he is our founder, Murong Yu? Yes. Why do I feel that he is a little familiar? Our founder's portrait is there for us to worship every day. Damn it. Now that our founder is standing in front of us, we can't even recognize him. Damn it. Greetings, founder. In an instant, all the disciples of Shenzhen, including the great elder, knelt down. They were all very excited. Many eras had passed. Shenzhen might have fallen, and many things had changed. But the legend of Murong Yu had never changed. Murong Yu was still in existence that countless disciples of Shenzhen revered. It would never change. However, in addition to being excited, the disciples and elders who had done all kinds of bad things were in fear and trepidation. They didn't know why Murong Yu came down to the cultivation realm. But it was obvious that Murong Yu was very angry now. They were definitely going to suffer. And sacred leader Wang Chao was their role model. Very good. You all still remember me, your founder. But have you all forgotten my Shenzhen's mission? Murong Yu's voice wasn't loud, but it was like a clap of thunder in everyone's ears. It shocked those who had bad intentions, causing their faces to turn pale. Seeing everyone's appearance, Murong Yu sighed in his heart. Although he was the master of the cultivation realm, immortal realm, and God realm, he could know what happened in these three realms with just a thought. But after ascending to the Holy Realm, he basically didn't care about these three realms. Therefore, he didn't know when Shenzhen of the Cultivation Realm had fallen. And if Shenzhen of the Cultivation Realm was like this, then what about the Immortal Realm? What about the God Realm? It's about time to clean up these vermin. Murong Yu thought to himself. Then, with a flash, he disappeared from where he stood. Although the people of Shenzhen noticed that Murong Yu had disappeared, they still knelt down. However, they remained kneeling on the ground, not daring to make any movements. Especially those disciples and elders who had done bad things, they didn't dare to move. They all knew that with Murong Yu's ability, they wouldn't be able to escape. Then, where did Murong Yu go? Did he ignore Shenzhen? Of course not. Murong Yu definitely wanted to clean up the vermin of Shenzhen, not only in the Cultivation Realm, but also in the Immortal Realm and God Realm. However, Shenzhen was so big, it would take a lot of time to completely clean it up. Murong Yu was used to being a hands-off boss, so he naturally didn't want to do it himself. Therefore, he went back to the Holy Realm to find people. Originally, the best people to deal with these matters were Yu Mengqing or Murong Xian and the others. But Murong Yu didn't want Yu Mengqing and the others to return to the Cultivation Realm, and he didn't know where Murong Xian and the others were. Therefore, after he returned to the Holy Realm, he went straight to find Duanmu Qing, Zhang Ao, and the others. Sima Ryu, Pei Pei Yu, Yang Man, Yu Jia, Mulan Shun, Jia Shui, Duanmu Qing, and Zhang Ao were all former team leaders. Not only was he decisive in killing, he was also extremely loyal to Murong Yu. It was definitely enough for them to deal with these matters. Therefore, in the end, Murong Yu brought the 8 of them to the Cultivation Realm, Immortal Realm, and God Realm. Among them, Duanmu Qing and Jia Shui went to the Cultivation Realm, and Sima Ryu and Pei Pei Yu went to the Immortal Realm. As for the remaining Zhang Ao and the others, they were all in the God Realm. The 8 of them all carried Murong Yu's keepsake, which was equivalent to Murong Yu's imperial envoys. Murong Yu gave them full authority to deal with them, killing those who should be killed, crippling those who should be crippled, absolutely lenient. Therefore, the end of Shenzhen's vermin was coming. No matter what they had done in the past, or where they were hiding now, they were all found out and killed, crippled, and killed. Among them, Shenzhen in the Cultivation Realm was the most depraved. Next was the Immortal Realm. However, Shenzhen in the Immortal Realm was not that bad, but if this continued, it would definitely turn into the Cultivation Realm. As for the God Realm, perhaps because Murong Yu and the others had just ascended, it had not depraved. But there were still some vermin, and they were directly found out by Zhang Ao and the others and killed. Shenzhen's series of actions killed many vermin, and it could be said to be a huge earthquake. In particular, the reorganization of the Cultivation Realm made those in Shenzhen who did not wallow in the mire feel excited. At the same time, the other sects and self-cultivators in the Cultivation Realm also let out a big sigh of relief. Although this series of actions did not immediately restore Shenzhen's prestige, it was no problem for Shenzhen to return to its previous position. After all, Shenzhen was a holy land for cultivation. Who didn't want to join Shenzhen? Even after several eras, Shenzhen still occupied the majority of the immortals who ascended in the Cultivation Realm. Other sects and powers rarely had any immortals who ascended. This could not be helped. Shenzhen had the best cultivation methods and the most abundant resources, which other sects could not compare to. And Murong Yu, who had caused all this, had already entered the immortal tomb. Chapter 1497. What a terrifying flow of time. This was Murong Yu's first exclamation after stepping into the immortal tomb. The reason why he used the word terrifying instead of fast was because the flow of time here had already surpassed the category of fast and reached a terrifying level. One moment was equivalent to 1 billion years of time. In other words, in the immortal tomb, 1 billion years of lifespan could be consumed in an instant. This kind of terrifying flow of time let alone people from the cultivation world. Even immortals, gods, and even sages below the undead realm would not be able to withstand it. Although the lifespan of sages and great sages was extremely long, it was not endless. There would still be a day when their lifespan would be exhausted. Moreover, the place where Murong-Yu was now was only the outermost part of the immortal tomb. What if it went deeper? The answer was obvious. After Murong-Yu took the second step, he felt that the flow of time had become even faster, more than twice as fast as before. However, because Murong-Yu was already a profound sage realm powerhouse, he had already reached the level of being immortal and indestructible. Therefore, although he felt that the flow of time was affecting his body, his lifespan did not decrease. Being immortal and indestructible was equivalent to not having any lifespan. It could also be said that he had an endless lifespan, inexhaustible and inexhaustible. However, Murong-Yu felt that there were some changes in his physical body. His physical body was aging and collapsing. It was just like the physical body of a dead soul. Murong-Yu frowned slightly, muttered to himself for a moment, and then understood. His lifespan was limitless, but his physical body was not limitless. The reason why his physical body and soul could remain in an immortal and indestructible state was because of Murong-Yu's vitality. The power in his body allowed his physical body to maintain its peak state. Now, with the rapid passage of time, his power was rapidly being consumed. Without enough power to support it, his physical body naturally began to age. However, this was not a problem. With a thought from Murong-Yu, the billions of roots of the Tree of Life began to dance. They devoured strands of chaotic force and surged into Murong-Yu's body. Then, with a surge of life force, Murong-Yu's body recovered to its peak state. The flow of time here is extremely fast, but it's different from accelerated time. However, all of this is caused by the power of time. I wonder if I can take this opportunity to cultivate the arcane formula. The flow of time here was different from the active acceleration of time. For example, Hichu Luoshu's time acceleration was able to accelerate time to the maximum within a limited amount of time. For example, if time was accelerated by 2 times, 1 day would become 2 days. In that case, it was very meaningful. However, the flow of time in the Immortal Mound was different. It was simply fast, but it didn't have any acceleration effect, because the time they spent in the past was the same. With a thought, Murong-Yu began to circulate the array character formula. The array character formula dominated time and space and had the power of time. After Murong-Yu obtained the arcane formula, the array character formula successfully advanced and reached the second stage. However, there were no surprises. It was just that Murong-Yu's speed of converting power into the power of time had increased, and the amount had increased. His control of the laws of time had also deepened and become more proficient. Previously, Murong-Yu had only been able to defy the heavens for a single day, using techniques like time reversal. Now, however, it had increased several times, reaching a few days. In other words, Murong-Yu could now send an expert back to a few days ago or a few days later. Moreover, it wasn't that easy to shatter the power of time. Murong-Yu continued to go deeper. As he went deeper, he circulated the array character formula, looking for a suitable place to cultivate. The Immortal Mound was an independent space, far larger than it looked from the outside. After the flow of time had no effect on Murong-Yu, it didn't affect Murong-Yu's speed. Finally, Murong-Yu entered the depths of the Immortal Mound. The flow of time here had reached a terrifying level of 100 billion seconds. It would only take 10 instants to consume the lifespan of an epic. Here, Murong-Yu felt that the array character formula was circulating very quickly and vigorously. Murong-Yu didn't even need to actively circulate it. It could circulate automatically. Streams of power of time were constantly being absorbed by Murong-Yu from the void. Murong-Yu now had 2 ways to obtain the power of time. One was to convert his own power into the power of time. For Murong-Yu, whose power was almost limitless, converting the power of time should be the best method. However, the speed at which he converted the power of time was too slow. Moreover, he couldn't convert all of his power into the power of time. Therefore, when he used up too much during a battle, he couldn't replenish it. He couldn't make ends meet. The second method was to directly absorb the power of time drifting between heaven and earth. Time and space coexisted, just like the power of space drifting between heaven and earth. It was endless. However, perhaps Murongyu's cultivation level was too low, or perhaps the array character formula hadn't been cultivated to a high level. The speed at which he absorbed the power of time from heaven and earth was even slower than the speed at which he converted it. The less power of time there was, the weaker the power of reversing time. Therefore, when Murongyu was being chased by the ancestral sages and even the primal chaos ancestral sages, he didn't reverse time at all. This was because it was useless and could be easily shattered. The power of time here is countless times denser than the outside world. The power of time devoured in every instant is 10 times more than outside. Murongyu was overjoyed. He frantically circulated the array character formula and began to extract the power of time here. The power of time was sealed in his body and could be used like strength when he used it. Moreover, during the extraction process, Murongyu felt that the array character formula was slowly improving. I can raise the level of the array character formula here. Murongyu was overjoyed. In the end, he sat down cross-legged and focused on extracting the power of time and cultivating the array character formula. He had plenty of time now anyway. He wanted to explore the immortal mound to improve his strength. Wasn't this the perfect time to improve his strength? As time passed, Murongyu extracted more and more power of time, and the array character formula was also slowly improving. At this moment, the pursuit of Murongyu was still going on in the Saint's world. However, no one had found any traces of Murongyu. But the more it was like this, the more enthusiastic they became. After an unknown amount of time, boom, Murongyu suddenly felt an explosion in his body. Following that, he saw that the formation character formula had finally entered the third stage from the second stage. Rumble. The moment the array character formula broke through, the speed at which Murongyu extracted the power of time skyrocketed. Originally, Murongyu was able to extract 10 units of temporal energy for a certain period of time. But after his breakthrough, he was able to extract 100 units of temporal energy. That was 10 times more than before. And this was only the ability to extract the power of time. In terms of using the power of time, he had become even more powerful. His ability to reverse time had also become more powerful. Murongyu could now even throw an ancestral sage into a different space and time, and the other party wouldn't be able to break through the restraints of time and return in a short time. But that wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was Murongyu slowly stood up. With a thought, layers of ripples appeared on the surface of his body. It was just that his power of time was in conflict with the power of time in the area he was in. He used the power of the laws of time to isolate himself from the power of time outside. This way, the power of time outside couldn't affect him. Naturally, he wouldn't be affected by the flow of time outside. However, Murongyu could only put up a preliminary resistance. He could only reduce the impact by 10 times. In other words, he could instantly take away 100 billion years of life from where he was. But after using the laws of time, Murongyu could only take away 10 billion years of his life. Moreover, as Murongyu's control of the laws of time deepened, this ability would only become stronger. Now, as long as I don't expend too much energy in a battle, my power of time can at least be balanced. After sensing the situation of the array character formula, a smile appeared on his face. It's time to take a look at the depths of the tomb. What in the world is this thing with such a terrifying flow of time? Murongyu took a step forward and disappeared on the spot. It wasn't that he didn't want to continue improving the array character formula, but that he couldn't do so at this stage. The deeper he went, the faster the flow of time became. Finally, Murongyu reached the deepest part of the immortal mound and stopped. What appeared in front of him was an enormous dragon head. In other words, a dragon head. The dragon head was ferocious, and its mouth was wide open. It was majestic without being angry. In fact, Murong, you could even feel waves of dragon aura covering the sky and earth, suppressing thousands of worlds. What shocked Murong the most was that there was only one dragon head here. After the dragon head, it disappeared into the void. It was as if the dragon's body was rooted in the void and couldn't be seen clearly. This is a real dragon. Originally, Murong thought that the dragon head was just a sculpture, but when he probed it with his divine consciousness, he found that the dragon head was actually real, a body of flesh and blood. However, it was a dead dragon. What's going on? Murong was shocked. Moreover, he also found that the dragon looked furious, as if it had died unjustly. Moreover, there was a stone door in the dragon's mouth that sealed it. Intuition told Murong that the secret of the tomb might be behind that stone door. With a swoosh, Murong arrived in front of the dragon head and entered it. At the same time, he reached out his hand and pushed the stone door. However, the stone door didn't budge. Chapter 1498. Murong pushed hard again, but the stone door still did not budge. This surprised him a little. One must know that he was very powerful, comparable to a high-level holy king, but he could not move this small stone door. What was going on? However, the more it was like this, the more Murong felt that there was a secret behind the stone door and that it was not simple. As long as it was a door, it could definitely be opened. Hence, Murong started to observe again. He tried many methods, but he still could not open this stone door. Suddenly, Murong exclaimed in surprise. This was because he saw that there was a small keyhole on the stone door. Furthermore, no matter how Murong looked at the keyhole, it felt very familiar. This is the appearance of the dragon-shaped key. After observing for a while, Murong could not help but exclaim in surprise. At the same time, as Murong's heart moved, the 4 dragon-shaped keys that he had obtained appeared in front of him. Whoosh! The moment the 4 dragon-shaped keys appeared, they all turned into a ray of light and shot towards each other. Before Murong could react, the 4 dragon-shaped keys had already collided violently and then merged into a brand new dragon-shaped key. Could this key really be the key to open this stone door? Murong was a little surprised. At the same time, he took a step forward with a new dragon-shaped key and sent it into the keyhole on the stone door. With a kacha sound, the dragon-shaped key in Murong's hand was perfectly inserted into the keyhole on the stone door. It was flawless, without any gaps, as if it had been cut from the stone door. Rumble! Before Murong could be surprised, a loud sound came from the stone door. Then, Murong saw that the stone door in front of him was slowly moving to the side. In a short while, the stone door had already disappeared from Murong's sight. And what appeared in front of Murong was a dark and deep tunnel with no end in sight. At the same time, a dragon's might that was as vast as the ocean surged over. Those with weaker strength would be suppressed to the ground by the dragon's might. Looking at the endless passageway, Murong took a deep breath. Then, with a thought, Hichu Luoshu transformed into a set of clothes that covered his body. The yin-yang cauldron spun slowly in the void above Murong's head. Streams of extremely powerful flame of primal chaos rained down, enveloping Murong and protecting him. At the same time, Murong grasped the supreme weapon, the heavenly purple pagoda. As long as there was an abnormal situation, Murong would immediately use the heavenly purple pagoda to kill everything. Hichu Luoshu and the yin-yang cauldron were responsible for himself. Whoosh! Without any hesitation, Murong took a step forward and rushed into the black tunnel. Rumble! As soon as Murong stepped into the space tunnel, the stone door quickly closed again. In an instant, Murong was plunged into eternal darkness. He couldn't even see his own fingers. Whoosh! Suddenly, a golden light flashed across the eternal darkness. Murong extended his hand and caught the golden light in his hand. At the same time, streaks of electric light appeared on Murong's body, illuminating the dark tunnel. Looking down, he realized that he was holding the dragon-shaped key in his hand. But at this time, the dragon-shaped key had turned back into the original 4 dragon-shaped keys. Muronyu didn't care so much. After putting the dragon-shaped key back into the Hichu Luoshu world, he strode forward. However, for some unknown reason, Muronyu felt a little strange as he walked through the passageway. Muronyu couldn't help but think of the dragon's head in the void. The stone door was stuck in the dragon's mouth, and Muronyu was now walking into the dragon's mouth. At this time, he had walked a long distance and should be far away from the dragon's head. It should be the abdomen of the real dragon. To put it nicely, Muronyu is now in the stomach of the real dragon. To put it bluntly, Muronyu is now walking in the intestines of the real dragon. Fortunately, although the tunnel was eternal darkness, there was no debris. If it was like the intestines of ordinary animals, there would be debris and excrement everywhere. Then Muronyu would be in trouble. Walking forward, it didn't take long. He didn't know how much distance he had walked. Finally, the day came. Poof! Muronyu felt a sudden push in the tunnel out of thin air. Then, before Muronyu could react, he saw a light in front of him and entered a bright space. Swish! Muronyu immediately hid his figure and became invisible in the void. After all, in this strange and unknown space, Muronyu had to be very careful. Otherwise, if he was sprayed into the cultivation place of a primal chaos ancestor saint expert, he would definitely be in trouble. After doing all this, Muronyu looked at the surrounding environment. This was a boundless, huge space. It was incomparably bright, almost the same, but there was a considerable difference. The first impression Muronyu had of this space was that it was big. No matter what it was big. Whether it was the clouds in the sky, the mountains, the stones. Even the trees, even the grass on the ground seemed incomparably far away. At this time, Muronyu was like an ant standing under a blade of grass. And Muronyu recognized this blade of grass. It was just an ordinary blade of grass in the holy world. But if this blade of grass was in the holy world, it would be no taller than the ankle. But now, it had almost reached a height of 10 feet. Did I come to the giant tribe? Looking at everything around him, Muronyu showed a wry smile on his face. In a giant tribe, even a newborn child was several feet tall. And the stronger the strength, the taller the giant tribe. It was because of this that Muronyu came to this inference. But this thought only flashed in his mind, and then he rejected it. This was because in this space, layers of draconic might existed in an overwhelming manner. The space was full of dragon might. The Dragon Clan world. By now, Muronyu had already determined what kind of space he had appeared in. After vaguely guessing that this space was the Dragon Clan world, Muronyu felt a little excited. Although the Dragon Clan was also a part of the Holy Clan, they did not participate in the war between the Holy Clan and the Human Clan. Moreover, before the Holy World, whether it was cultivators, immortals, or gods, they all had the power of dragons. From the lowest level of Flood Dragon to Sky Dragon, and so on. The true dragon had always been a legendary existence. Thinking that he came to this Dragon Clan world and would see many true dragons, how could Muronyu not be excited? Muronyu continued to look at this space. However, when his gaze swept across the dragon tail that was stuck in a void, his face couldn't help but darken. Why? Because there was only one passage in the dragon tail. That was the true dragon's anus. And Muronyu just came out from that anus. He was excreted by the true dragon. At the thought of becoming the true dragon's feces, Muronyu's face turned dark. Whoosh! Muronyu rose into the air and finally stood in the sky, looking in all directions. Muronyu still hadn't figured out the situation in the Dragon Clan's world, so he didn't rashly send out his divine sense. If he accidentally alarmed some true dragons, Muronyu's end would be tragic. Huge hills appeared in Muronyu's line of sight. A series of deep yet intimidating dragon roars could be faintly heard, causing Muronyu's heart to tremble with incomparable shock. Looking at those huge hills, Muronyu exclaimed after a long time, "This is the true dragon's tomb?" Although these hills were different in size and appearance, but they all looked like tombs. But perhaps because the true dragon's body was too big, their tombs were naturally much bigger than other people's tombs. The Dragon Clan's tomb. I actually entered the Dragon Clan's tomb. Morong Yu was extremely shocked, but also a little surprised. In the secular world, those ordinary families and powers also had similar tombs that were concentrated in one place. Their ancestors were buried there, and those tombs were the favorite places of tomb robbers. Why was this? This was because those people all had valuable funerary items. The cultivation world, immortal world, divine world, and even the holy world were the same. In other words, in this Dragon Clan's tomb, besides the Dragon Clan's corpses, there were also a large number of various treasures. Moreover, the Dragon Clan's lost bodies were also priceless. I'm rich this time. Morong Yu was extremely excited. Indeed, he had a special feeling for the true dragons and even wanted to befriend the Dragon Clan. But those were two different things. Now, that Morong Yu had landed in this treasure land. If he didn't take some treasures, he would really be sorry for himself. Although this was a little disrespectful to the Dragon Clan's ancestors. But if it was disrespectful, then so be it. With a thought, Morong Yu chose an ordinary-looking tomb and landed. Then, he used his great magical power and went straight in. These tombs didn't have any restrictions. Presumably, the true dragons felt that this place was very safe and no one dared to behave atrociously here, right? In fact, this was the Dragon Clan's forbidden area. No one dared to take half a step closer. And they couldn't break in, because outside the Dragon Clan's tomb, there were layers of Dragon Clan powerhouses guarding. Therefore, Morong Yu entered this true dragon's tomb effortlessly. There was another space inside. A lifelike true dragon's corpse appeared in Morong Yu's line of sight, and a huge wave of dragon aura was constantly emitted from the true dragon's body, filling this tomb space. And next to the true dragon, there were piles of shiny treasures. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.